Chapter 2665. Profound meaning. In the image, there was a vast and boundless starry sky. This starry sky was cold and lonely without any stars. Zhuowen knew that this should be the initial starry sky when Pangu had just split open the chaos. In the center of this starry sky, there was a huge figure that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was Pangu. Pangu's body was collapsing. His essence blood turned into 12 beams of bloody light and shot in all directions. His primordial spirit turned into 3 beams of green light and escaped into the void. Pangu's flesh and blood spilled in all directions, turning into sparkling stars that filled the sky. Among the countless stars, Zhuowen saw a stone shoot out of Pangu's heart. This stone emitted a 7-colored light. Is that Pangu's heart? Zhuowen guessed. The image came to an abrupt end when the 7-colored stone shot out of Gu Xian's mouth. Zhuowen tried to touch the 7-colored stone with his hand, but he was bounced back by an invisible force when he was 1 foot away. After several attempts, Zhuowen gave up on this method. Instead, he controlled the Panga banner to approach the 7-colored stone. Although he could not fully control the Panga banner, it was not difficult for him to move it. The moment the Panga banner approached the 7-colored stone, the 7-colored lines on the stone's surface shot into the Panga banner like rainbow-colored veins. The Panga banner emitted a strange buzzing sound. Zhuowen clearly felt the joy of the Panga banner from this buzzing sound. Crack! 2 hours later, the 7-colored lines on the 7-colored stone in front of the Panga banner completely dimmed, then turned into countless fine powder. Zhuowen knew that all the energy of this stone should be condensed in the 7-colored lines on its surface. When all the energy of the lines was absorbed by the Panga banner, this stone was no different from an ordinary stone. This is, after completely absorbing the energy of the 7-colored stone, Zhuowen found that the wide surface of the Panga banner had changed a lot. Originally, the banner should have drawn the image of Pangu holding the heaven-splitting double axes. Now, Zhuowen found 4 words at the 4 corners of Pangu's image. The 4 words at the 4 corners of the banner were break, erect, prohibit, and destroy. The image of Pangu seemed to have materialized much clearer than before. Also, Zhuowen found that the image of Pangu on the banner was more vivid and full of spirituality than before. For example, if the previous image of Pangu was an ordinary black and white painting, then the current image of Pangu's image of Pangu was a colorful painting with additional colors. Profound? The moment the 4 words appeared on the banner, a corresponding message appeared in the depths of Zhuowen's mind. This message introduced the meaning of the 4 words. From the information in his mind, Zhuowen knew that the 4 words represented the 4 powerful, profound meanings contained in the Panga banner. They were created by Pangu when he was born. Among the 4 profound meanings, the break profound meaning was the sky-splitting blade. The erect profound meaning was the creation mysterious light. The prohibit profound meaning was the infinite primordial chaos. And the destroy profound meaning was the death of heaven and earth. These 4 profound meanings all had the power to destroy heaven and earth, and they could only be displayed through the Panga banner. Moreover, the 4 profound meanings had completely different abilities. For example, the sky-splitting blade was the break profound meaning, which could tear the chaos, split time and space, and open up the infinite world. The create mysterious light was the erect profound meaning, which could be divided into yin and yang, the 5 elements, and give birth to the infinite earth, water, fire, and wind. The infinite primordial chaos was the restrict profound meaning, which could create chaos, cover up the universe, and create the infinite chaotic world. The death of heaven and earth was the destroy profound meaning, which could destroy heaven and earth, ancient and modern, and destroy countless worlds. Zhuowen thought for a moment and roughly understood the functions and effects of these 4 profound meanings. However, Zhuowen also knew that it was still a little difficult for him to use the 4 great profundities. Of course, Zhuowen also knew that once these four profound meanings were successfully displayed, their power would definitely be extraordinary. Moreover, Zhuowen was most surprised by the Panga banner's materialized image of Pangu. He knew that the Panga banner's biggest gain after absorbing the colorful stone was not the four profound meanings, but the materialized image of Pangu. From the message transmitted by the Panga banner, he knew that the Panga pattern was actually the Panga shadow, the ultimate profound meaning of the Panga banner. It was said that as long as one could activate the power of the Panga banner, they could summon the Panga shadow and display the supreme power of Pangu. However, this profound meaning was the ultimate profound meaning of the Panga banner, and the requirements were extremely harsh. At the very least, one had to have a 7-star Pangu sacred body to be qualified to display it. If one's strength did not reach the 7-star Pangu sacred body, it was said that if one forcibly displayed the ultimate profound meaning of the Panga shadow, one's body and soul would be destroyed. As for the other 4 profound meanings, the requirements were relatively lax. As long as one could condense the Pangu sacred body, they would be qualified to display the profound meanings. Moreover, as the Pangu sacred body became stronger, the power of the 4 profound meanings would also become stronger. Now that he had activated these 4 profound meanings, whether it was his original body or his doppelganger, as long as he had the Panga banner in his hand, he could use them. Of course, the ultimate profound meaning of the Panga shadow could only be displayed after he condensed a Panga sacred body and reached the 7-star Pangu sacred body. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, an ear-piercing roar came from the passage north of the altar. Zhuowen's eyes flickered, and he jumped down and rushed to the north. As soon as he entered the passage, Zhuowen found that there were countless black shadows flashing in the passage. Every black shadow had a pair of blood-red eyes, which were staring at Zhuowen greedily. Zhuowen spread out his divine sense and recognized the true faces of these black shadows. They were bats half the size of a man, hanging upside down in the air above the passage. Now that Zhuowen had suddenly entered the passage, he immediately awakened these bats. Then the passage was filled with the sound of flapping wings. Then these bats roared and rushed toward Zhuowen, trying to devour him. Zhuowen snorted coldly and immediately drew his sacrificial death sword. Blade after blade of death light flashed and slammed into the bodies of the countless bats in the surroundings. Sizzle! 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 The bats were all blown away by the sacrifice of death sword. However, what made Zhuowen frown was that these strange bats had thick skin. The sacrifice of death sword did not cause much damage to them. Zhuowen's attack had naturally angered this group of bats. These bats let out even more ear-piercing roars. The sound waves were like ripples gathering in Zhuowen's ears. Even Zhuowen felt an extremely uncomfortable buzzing sound in his ears. It was as if countless drums were beating next to his ears. Zhuowen snorted, and his powerful divine sense burst out like ripples. He immediately used the soul kill. Then Zhuowen was surprised to find that the huge bats around him were like mice that had encountered cat. They let out sounds of horror, and all fell to the ground. Chapter 2666. Flaming Batsuin looked at this scene strangely and soon realized that it was his spiritual sense that caused all this. To be more precise, it was the aura of the Panga banner in his spirit. After his spirit was transformed by the Panga banner, every time he used his spiritual sense, it would carry the ancient aura of the Panga banner. These bats were not afraid of Zhuowen's powerful spiritual sense, but the ancient aura carried by Zhuowen's spiritual sense. After figuring out this connection, Zhuowen used his spiritual sense to form a veil that covered the surface of his body. Then, like a gust of wind, he rushed into the depths of the passage. Although he could kill all the bats here if he continued to use soul kill, it would consume a lot of his energy. Moreover, his spiritual sense found that there were more bats in this passage than the ones in front of him. There were more ahead. If he had to kill them one by one, how long would it take? Along the way, these strange bats were afraid of Zhouwen's spiritual sense. Although many of them were ready to attack, none of them dared to come forward. About an hour later, Zhouwen arrived at the place where the sound came from. Immediately, he found that what appeared in front of him was a huge open space. At the center of this open space was a large magma pool with an extremely high temperature. Endless waves of heat surged over like scorching tornadoes. Above the magma pool was a huge flaming bat, flapping a pair of huge flame wings on its back. This flaming bat was much larger than the bats Zhouwen had encountered along the way. It was about 30 meters in length. In particular, the aura emitted by this flaming bat was really terrifying. Zhouwen was sure that this flaming bat at least had the strength of primordial chaos lord. At this moment, in front of the flaming bat, two figures were struggling to resist the attacks of the flaming bat. These two figures were not unfamiliar to Zhouwen. They were Fire Plume and Steel Plume. Boom! Boom! The flaming bat let out a shrill cry, and countless streams of lava turned into surging streams that poured down in front of Fire Feather and Steel Feather. Pucci, Fire Plume, who was holding a red feather fan, was at the end of her rope. Now that she was hit by the stream of magma, she could not hold on any longer. She spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying backward, landing not far away. Seeing this, Steel Plume roared and his whole body erupted with a metallic luster. His originally huge body expanded several times, and he quickly waved his fists. Countless fist shadows set off a terrifying storm of Taoist rhyme. The terrifying stream of magma was blasted into countless magma droplets by the fist shadows. Steel Feather, on the other hand, used the recoil to continuously retreat. In the process of retreating, he pulled Fire Feather and retreated together. Roar! Steel Plumes, the flaming bat, Hughes Fire Plume is me Fire Bat. The flaming bat roared at the sky, flapped its wings, and disappeared like a bolt of lightning. When it reappeared, it was already above Steel Plume and Fire Plume. Countless flames erupted from the flaming bat's body, forming an extremely solid flaming prison that enveloped Steel Plume and Fire Plume. Moreover, the flaming prison erupted with terrifying flames, like an endless rain of fire, surrounding Fire Plume and Steel Plume. The flaming bat's flaming energy was extremely special and powerful. Even if Steel Plume used all his strength, he could only barely protect himself and Fire Plume. Zhouwen silently watched this scene. He could feel that the flaming bat was not to be trifled with, especially in this predicament. If Steel Plume and Fire Plume did not have a stronger trump card, the two of them would undoubtedly die. Steel Plume and Fire Plume's eyes were filled with despair. They had already used all their trump cards, but they were still no match for the flaming bat. They knew very well that when Steel Plume could not hold on, it would be their death. At the same time, Fire Plume and Steel Plume also noticed Zhouwen, who had just appeared. However, the despair in their eyes did not diminish in the slightest. In their opinion, Zhouwen's strength was on par with Steel Plume's. Even if the two of them joined forces, they were no match for the flaming bat. Zhouwen's arrival was just another death sentence. The flaming bat glanced at Zhouwen, who was not far away, with a human-like look of contempt, as if it was looking at an ant. It continued to leisurely control its flames to attack Fire Plume and Steel Plume. In the flaming bat's opinion, the human who had just appeared was simply courting death. It was not in a hurry to make a move. It planned to deal with the two ants in front of it first. Zhouwen narrowed his eyes. He realized that a dense swarm of bats had unknowingly gathered behind him. These bats stared coldly at Zhouwen with their scarlet eyes and blocked Zhouwen's path. Zhouwen sneered in his heart. He knew what the flaming bat was planning. Unfortunately, if the flaming bat knew that he had the Panga banner in his spirit, it would not be so careless. Zhouwen, you'd better leave quickly. You'll just lose your life if you stay. Fire Plume's voice rang in Zhouwen's mind. Zhouwen looked at the Fire Plume in the Cheongsam. He thought that Fire Plume had sent him a voice transmission to ask him to help them. He did not expect that Fire Plume wanted him to leave. Soul kill. Zhuo-wen took a step forward, and his powerful divine sense turned into a hurricane that swept out. Instantly, the bats behind him that were eyeing him covetously were affected by this divine sense, and they kept squeaking as they fell to the ground, twitching and struggling. Zhuo-wen shot out like an arrow from a bow and headed directly for the flaming bat. When the flaming bat saw that Zhuo-wen had actually blown away the swarm of bats with a single blow, its originally careless gaze suddenly became much more serious. Roar! The flaming bat opened its mouth and spat out a stream of flames that turned into countless spirals and shot toward Zhuo-wen. Zhuo-wen coldly snorted and immediately used the slaughtering Dao finger. Countless heavenly energy converged into a huge finger that crossed the sky and landed on the spirals of flames. However, what made Zhuo-wen's face turn gloomy was that when the slaughtering Dao finger blasted on the spirals of flames, it only caused the spirals of flames to stagnate for a moment before they collapsed. The slaughtering Dao finger was Zhuo-wen's strongest technique at present. However, it only caused the spirals of flames to stagnate for a moment before they collapsed. It could be seen that the strength of the flaming bat was far beyond Zhuo-wen's imagination. Soul kill! Zhuo-wen quickly retreated. At the same time, he used the soul kill and blasted it directly toward the flaming bat. Originally, the flaming bat wanted to follow up with another attack. However, when it felt the ancient aura of Zhuo-wen's soul kill, it let out a sharp cry. Its body trembled, and it involuntarily took a few steps back. Zhuo-wen's consciousness attack did not have much effect on the flaming bat. The main thing that affected it was the ancient aura contained in the consciousness. Chapter 2667. Annihilate Bang. 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 The moment the flaming bat was frightened by the aura of the Panga banner, Zhuo-wen's eyes lit up. He took a step forward, and 3 sword lights appeared from his body. The 3 sword lights were the Blood Immortal Sword, the Thunder Fire Sword, and the Death Sacrifice Sword. The 3 divine swords turned into 3 different directions and easily pierced the flaming bat's vital points before it could react. Roar! Roar! The flaming bat was furious. The energy around its body swirled and blew away the 3 divine swords that had pierced its body. However, Zhuo-wen could feel that the flaming bat was heavily injured. After all, he had aimed at the bat's 3 vital points. The wounds that were pierced by the divine swords were bleeding profusely, causing the flaming bat's movements to become much slower. A flaming hurricane swept out. Immediately, the flaming bat ignored Fire Plume and Steel Plume and attacked Zhuo-wen with all its might. Zhuo-wen frowned slightly. He tried his best to activate his consciousness and use the soul kill. He wanted to use the aura of the Panga banner to suppress the flaming bat. The flaming bat was indeed affected by the soul kill, and its movements were a lot slower. However, this fellow's strength was not something ordinary bats could compare to. It actually withstood the suppression of the aura and charged toward Zhuo-wen. This guy is finished. Fire Plume, who had just broken free from the flaming prison, almost collapsed to the ground. Fortunately, Steel Plume caught him. He could not help but shake his head and smile bitterly when he saw the flaming bat rushing toward Zhuo-wen. Steel Plume's eyes flickered. Although he also wanted to help, resisting the flaming bat had consumed too much of his strength. He had no ability to stop the flaming bat, which was now in a berserk state. Moreover, the flaming bat was too fast. Even if he took action now, he would not be able to catch up. Zhuo-wen, on the other hand, was much calmer. The 4 great mysteries that the Panga banner had transmitted to him kept echoing in his mind. His eyes revealed a look of enlightenment. These 4 profound meanings had been deeply imprinted in Zhuo-wen's mind under the effect of the Panga banner. It was just that he had encountered such a situation before he tried to release the profound meanings. Now that they were in such a dangerous situation, Zhuo-wen became even calmer. The 4 great profound meanings kept flashing through his mind. Just as the flaming bat was about to approach Zhuowen suddenly moved. Zhuowen slowly raised his right hand and waved it casually. The moment he waved his right hand emitted an intense golden light that could not be looked at directly. Although this golden light was only a small part of Zhuowen's hand blade, the golden light it emitted was earth-shattering and contained an extremely terrifying power. Puchi! Zhuowen's karate chop landed lightly on the flaming bat. The karate chop ignored the flame defense in front of the flaming bat and went straight through. It then landed heavily on the flaming bat's body. The flaming bat screamed at the sky. Then, countless cracks appeared on its body. Dazzling golden light burst out from the cracks. In the end, the flaming bat was completely enveloped by the golden light and was annihilated into nothingness. The moment the flaming bat was annihilated, Fire Plume and Steel Plume were stunned on the spot, unable to say a word. Zhuowen, on the other hand, was pleasantly surprised. Just now, when the flaming bat attacked, he used the profound meaning of destruction to create a chi blade. The final effect surprised Zhuowen. The chi blade was too terrifying. It destroyed the flaming bat with just one blow. Moreover, he knew very well that the real chi blade was extremely huge. It was said that it had the power to split the sky. Zhuowen was only at the beginner level. However, even if he was only at the beginner level, the chi blade that Zhuowen used was so terrifying that it made people tremble. It actually destroyed the flaming bat with one blow. However, Zhuowen soon felt an intense sense of fatigue in his body. He almost couldn't stand steadily. This caused Zhuowen to be secretly shocked at the terrifying consumption of the sky-splitting blade. Zhuowen quickly took out a pill that could restore essence from the spirit ring. After swallowing it, he felt that the weakness in his body had recovered a little. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with shock as he thought to himself, "Isn't this profound a little too taxing on me? If it weren't for the fact that I didn't fully unleash the sky-splitting blade, I'm afraid I would have been exhausted to death by the sky-splitting blade." Just now, Zhuowen had used up most of the energy in his body with just one blow. Zhuowen couldn't imagine that if he had used the second blow, he would have been done for. At the same time, he also had a deeper understanding of the power of the 4 profound meanings in the Penga banner. At the very least, if he used these profound meanings, it shouldn't be a problem for him to kill an existence at the level of Lord Hunyuan. Steel Plume and Fire Plume had already come back to their senses. Fire Plume directly came in front of Zhuowen and pointed her slender finger at Zhuowen. She trembled and said, How did you do it?" Steel Plume stood behind Fire Plume and looked at Zhuowen with a complicated expression. He originally thought that Zhuowen's strength was at most on par with his. However, the process of Zhuowen using his strength to kill the flaming bat had shocked him too much. He also knew that the white-clothed youth in front of him was stronger than him. However, Steel Plume couldn't imagine how the white-clothed youth in front of him could be so powerful when he was only at the life and death extremities. In Steel Plume's opinion, even the peerless geniuses of Dao Palace forces wouldn't be able to kill a flaming bat at the level of Lord Hunyuan while at the life and death extremities. This simply defied common sense. However, the white-clothed youth in front of them had done it. Moreover, he had killed a flaming bat at the level of Lord Hunyuan right under their noses. Zhuowen came back to his senses and looked at Fire Plume indifferently. He said, "Oh, I just casually waved my hand and the bat was destroyed. It's that simple." Fire Plume's face flushed red. She said in exasperation, "How can it be that simple? This monster almost killed Steel Plume. You're only at the life and death extremities. How can you be a match for this flaming bat? I don't believe that you killed this flaming bat. It must be some expert hiding in the dark." Zhuowen frowned slightly. He felt that Fire Plume was too competitive. However, he didn't mind. He said, "If that's what you think, then so be it." Seeing Zhuowen's indifferent attitude, Fire Plume was furious. She stomped her foot and was about to speak again when Steel Plume stopped her. Brother Zhuo, I'm really sorry. Our young miss was too agitated and lost her mind. Please don't take it to heart. Chapter 2668. Pocket World. How did you get here after entering the origin grounds? Zhuowen asked casually. After Steel Plume explained. Zhuowen learned that Fire Plume and Steel Plume had also appeared in front of a bronze door after being sucked in by the vortex. However, the bronze door they were in wasn't tightly shut, but was open. However, after entering the bronze door, they had encountered many dangers. They had encountered many terrifying traps, and if not for their vigilance, they would have died long ago. Moreover, if not for Zhuowen's arrival, the two of them would have died without a doubt. Brother Zhuo, thank you for saving our lives this time. We discovered a high-class heavenly law origin crystal vein ahead, and we are willing to share it with you, Brother Zhuo. Steel Plume cupped his fists towards Zhuowen. Fire Plume's expression changed slightly, but when she remembered that Zhuowen was their savior, she didn't raise any objections even though she was unwilling. Zhuowen didn't mind. He had discovered a special class heavenly law origin crystal, and his spirit ring was almost filled to the brim with special class heavenly law origin crystals. It was normal for him to not care about high-class heavenly law origin crystals. A heavenly law origin crystal vein is too big. I don't think we can take it away with just the few of us. Moreover, the heavenly law of the heavenly law origin crystal vein is too powerful. Even if the spirit ring has so much space, the spirit ring itself can't withstand the terrifying heavenly law of the heavenly law origin crystal vein, Zhuowen said casually. When Zhuowen discovered the special class heavenly law origin crystal vein, he originally wanted to uproot it and store it in the Devourer King's space. However, he discovered that although the Devouring King's space was massive, it did not possess the power of laws of a true world. Due to the lack of power of laws, if he recklessly placed a special grade heavenly law origin crystal vein into the Devouring King's space, the space might not be able to withstand it and might even collapse. However, the space in the spirit ring was small and could only store a small amount of special grade heavenly Tao origin crystals. The heavenly Tao laws contained in this small amount of special grade heavenly Tao origin crystals were not too terrifying. However, the heavenly Tao law of the entire mine was too terrifying. Although the Devourer King's space was huge, it wasn't a real world. It didn't have the corresponding heavenly Tao law. Previously, Zhuowen had felt that something was wrong. This was also the reason why Zhuowen did not use the Devourer King's space to store the ore vein. What Zhuowen was surprised about was what kind of space Steel Feather and Fire Feather had. Not only could it withstand the powerful heavenly Tao laws of the heavenly Tao origin crystal vein, but it was also large enough to carry the entire vein. Steel Plume and Fire Plume exchanged glances, then looked at Zhuowen strangely and said in unison, although the heavenly law origin crystal vein is large, it is still possible to uproot it. There is a corresponding container in the Xian Mi heavenly domain that can store the heavenly law origin crystal vein. Zhuowen was startled. Immediately after, he looked at Fire Plume and Steel Plume in disbelief and asked subconsciously, how? The ore vein is so big that the spirit ring can't possibly store it, right? Steel Plume smiled and said, indeed, the spirit ring can't store it, but the miniature world can. In the Xian Mi heavenly domain, the disciples of the major forces all have miniature worlds. These miniature worlds are very large, the size of a planet. Moreover, they also have corresponding world laws, which are not much different from a real world. They can withstand the heavenly Tao laws of the heavenly Tao origin crystal vein. Moreover, the miniature worlds of some super powerhouses have all kinds of powerful world laws. Every step they take is filled with killing intent. In these miniature worlds, they can do whatever they want. Zhuowen revealed a strange look. This was the first time he had heard of a miniature world. He had never heard of such a thing in the 8 heavenly domains. Only the higher level Xian Mi heavenly domain could create such a strange miniature world. If one had a miniature world, they could indeed store an entire Orvain without fearing the backlash of the heavenly Tao laws of the heavenly Tao origin, crystal vein. Zhuowen had obtained the Devourer King's clone for a long time. He only knew that the Devourer King's internal space was huge, but he didn't know how to use it, let alone how to form world laws in the Devourer King's internal space. Now that Zhuowen was enlightened by the miniature world, he couldn't help but wonder if the Devourer King's internal space could also form various world laws and become a real starry sky world. Although there were many stars in the Devourer King's internal space, these stars were still external. The world laws in these stars had been in the internal space for a long time. The world laws in these stars seemed to have dissipated, no different from the void around the internal space. Zhuowen looked at the dim stars in his internal space and sighed in relief. He was glad that he didn't keep the Ziwei galaxy and the Ryuka race in his internal space. With the dissipated world laws in the Devourer King's internal space, it would be difficult for him to cultivate to the 9 steps void sky steps. It would be wishful thinking if he wanted to prove his Tao in the internal space. Thinking about the Ryuka race, Zhuowen revealed a look of nostalgia. Back then, the Ryuka race was still developing in the far west of the Great Brahma Domain. When Zhuowen returned to the Great Brahma Domain, too many things happened. He didn't have the time to see how the Ryuka race was doing. When he returned to the Great Brahma Domain, he planned to head to the far west to bring the Ryuka race back and bring them to the Xianmi Heavenly Domain. How about this? I only want 10% of the high-grade Heavenly Tao origin crystal vein, but can you give me a miniature world? Zhuowen cupped his fists towards Fire Plume and Steel Plume. Zhuowen was extremely curious about the miniature world. Perhaps he could get some inspiration from the miniature world and improve the Devourer King's internal space. At that time, Zhuowen could even transform the internal space in the Devourer King's internal space into a real starry sky. At that time, it wouldn't be like a pool of stagnant water like it was now. Fire Plume and Steel Plume frowned. They only had 2 miniature worlds on them. Even with their wealth, a miniature world was extremely precious. However, Zhuowen had saved their lives. Moreover, he only wanted 10% of the high-grade Heavenly Tao origin crystal vein. After all, if it weren't for Zhuowen, they wouldn't be alive right now. Brother Zhua, this is my miniature world. Take it. Steel Plume made a prompt decision. He immediately took out a ring and handed it to Zhuowen. This ring was similar to a spirit ring, but its appearance was more simple. If one didn't look carefully, they would think that it was a spirit ring. However, when Zhuowen took the ring and probed it with his divine sense, he felt a strong aura of vitality. Then he found that there was a world with distinct heaven and earth inside the ring, as if he was on a huge planet. Chapter 2669. Promoted to Heavenly Tao Divine Array Master. Many thanks, Brother Steel Plume. Steel Plume waved his hand and reminded Brother Zhua, the principle of the miniature world is actually modified from the spirit ring. Brother Zhua, it's best if you take good care of it. Also, you can put all your spirit rings in the miniature world. It doesn't reject other spatial items. Zhua kept the miniature world and cupped his fists at Steel Plume. Then he silently used the Devourer King's innate ability, Devour, to devour the principal energy in the miniature world. Soon, Zhua was pleasantly surprised to find that when the principal energy of the miniature world entered Devour's miniature world, traces of principal energy actually appeared in the originally lawless world. Zhua did not continue to absorb the principal energy. Instead, he silently observed the miniature world in the spirit ring on his finger. At the same time, he was constantly deducing and comparing the miniature world with the Devourer King's miniature world. Fire Plume and Steel Plume looked at Zhua, who suddenly stiffened in front of them. Then Steel Plume muttered to himself in astonishment. Brother Zhua is deducing the principal energy of the miniature world? Is he in a state of enlightenment? Fire Plume was also shocked. He looked at Zhua strangely. Although they knew that Zhua also knew a little about arrays, they did not know that Zhua was a grade 9 Divine Array Master. Therefore, they felt that it was an arduous and unrewarding task for Zhuo Feng to deduce the miniature world. In their opinion, Zhuo would wake up very soon. However, the two of them waited for 3 days and 3 nights. On this day, the originally motionless Zhuo finally moved. Zhuo opened his eyes, which flashed with excitement. Then, Zhuo's body was surrounded by a powerful aura of Taoist rhymes. Fire Plume and Steel Plume were surprised to find that the Taoist rhymes around Zhuo had actually formed a complicated array formation. However, these restrictions and arrays were short-lived and soon disappeared. An hour later, the restrictions and arrays formed by the Taoist rhymes had all dissipated, and Zhuo opened his eyes. Fire Feather and Steel Feather looked at Zhuo with complicated expressions. They knew that at this moment, Zhuo Wen's array Dao level had undergone a transformation. He had actually advanced to the heavenly Dao level. How is this possible? This guy only took a look at the surface restrictions of the small world, and he actually comprehended it just like that and became a heavenly Dao divine formation master. Isn't this too sick? Huiyu thought to herself in disbelief. Steel Plume's expression was not much better than Fire Plume's. Only Zhuo's eyes were filled with excitement. He was the only one who knew why he could suddenly achieve a breakthrough. It was because he had the Devourer King's internal space as a reference. Zhuo couldn't be more familiar with the Devourer King's internal space. This time, he had obtained a small world filled with laws. Comparing the two different worlds, Zhuo immediately became enlightened and entered a state of epiphany. Although it had only been 3 days, Zhuo felt like 3 years had passed during this period of enlightenment. During this period of enlightenment, he had completely deduced the entire process of Devourer King's internal space evolving into a great world filled with laws. It was precisely because he had deduced the true great world during that moment of enlightenment that Zhuo Wen's array Dao level had also undergone a complete transformation in that instant. He had naturally advanced to become a heavenly Dao array Dao master. The moment Zhuo opened his eyes, he saw Fire Plume and Steel Plume looking at him with complicated expressions. "Brother Zhuo, follow me to the ore vein." Steel Plume calmed down and said. Zhuo shook his head and said, "You guys go first. When the time comes, just leave behind 10% of the ore vein. I still have other things to do." Steel Plume and Fire Plume didn't suspect anything. They cupped their fists at Zhuo and left. Zhuo also returned the way he came and arrived at the place where he found the special grade Heavenly Dao Origin Crystal. Zhuo didn't immediately take action. Instead, he used his divine sense to follow the entrance of the mine and continuously extend it until he reached the end of the mine. Only then did he discover that this mine was extremely long. Even though his divine sense was powerful enough, he could still barely reach the end of the mine. Zhuo took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with fanaticism and excitement. He knew that the value of this ore vein had far exceeded his expectations. Although he had already deduced the direction of the Devourer King's internal space evolving into a major world, he knew that it would take time to completely transform it into a major world. Right now, he could only use the minor world he obtained from Steel Plume. Moreover, he also knew that as long as the Devourer King's internal space successfully transformed, it would surpass any minor world in the Xianmi heavenly region. Moreover, from the Devourer King's memories, it seemed that the previous Devourer Kings had never tried to transform their internal space into a major world. This was an unprecedented attempt. I must uproot this ore vein and store it in my minor world. Zhuo came back to his senses. Soon after, his power surged into his divine sense. At the same time, he continuously used his soul kill power. Borrowing the power of his divine sense, he formed a huge net-like object. Then he began to slowly pull the load. Boom, boom, boom. While the ore vein was being pulled, the entire passage began to tremble violently. At the same time, ear-piercing rumbling sounds could be heard. Zhuo's expression remained calm. He forcefully activated his divine sense. Immediately, the trembling around him became even more intense. At the same time, the head of the Orvain began to be slowly pulled out. 3 days later, Zhuo's forehead was covered in sweat. He had finally pulled out the entire special grade, heavenly law origin crystal vein and barely managed to store it in his minor world. Looking at the mountain-like special grade, heavenly law origin crystal vein in his minor world, Zhuo revealed an excited smile. With so many special grade, heavenly law origin crystal veins in his possession, Zhuo knew that he could establish an incomparably powerful force. Even if he didn't establish a force, he wouldn't have to worry about not having enough resources for his cultivation in the future. After putting away the Orvain, Zhuo sent a message to Fire Plume and Steel Plume. After receiving their location, Zhuo rushed towards Fire Plume and Steel Plume. Fire Plume and Steel Plume were currently in a mountain range. The two of them had already excavated all the special grade, heavenly law origin crystal veins. Seeing Zhuo come over, Steel Plume did not hesitate to cut off 10% of the Orvain and handed it over to Zhuo. Zhuo did not refuse. After putting the 10% of the Orvain into his minor world, he looked around and said, "There are still many unknown places in the origin land, but this place is also full of unknown dangers. Do the two of you still plan to go deeper?" Zhuo knew very well that the origin land was very large, but he also knew that the most important thing in this place was the Stone of Origin. Now that he had obtained the Stone of Origin as well as many resources, he did not plan to stay any longer. Fire Plume and Steel Plume also understood Zhuo's meaning and shook their heads, not intending to continue exploring. Chapter 2670. The 9-storied pagoda. At least they were already very satisfied. Now that they knew the entrance to the origin grounds, they could explore it again in the future. There was no need to go deeper now. After all, they had personally experienced the dangers here. "Let's go. I know the route to the exit. Just follow me," Zhuowen said as he took the lead and rushed forward. The route given by the Panga banner not only included the route to enter the origin grounds, but also the route to leave. Although Fire Plume and Steel Plume were puzzled, they had no choice but to believe in Zhuowen. "Brother Zhuo, where are your two friends?" Steel Plume asked along the way. Zhuowen's heart sank. He shook his head and said, "I've already sent a message to them, but I didn't get a reply." Originally, Zhuowen and Bloodscale had a master-servant contract, so they could sense each other to a certain extent. However, after Zhuowen obtained the Origin Stone, the connection between him and Bloodscale suddenly disappeared. This meant that Bloodscale had died, or that someone had taken the initiative to remove the master-servant contract. If anyone had the ability to remove the connection, Zhuowen felt that it should be the green-haired mummy. Of course, Bloodscale was also very likely to have died in the origin grounds. After all, Bloodscale's strength was far from recovered. It was very normal for him to encounter danger in the origin grounds and die. As Zhuowen followed the route given by the Panga banner and approached the destination, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. To be more precise, he realized that the moment he arrived at the destination, there was a huge discrepancy between the information given to him by the Panga banner. According to the information given by the Panga banner, there should be a transmission array at the end of the route. Moreover, the location was remote and extremely inconspicuous. When Zhuowen arrived at the destination, what he saw was not a remote corner, but a huge open space. In the middle of this open space stood a huge tower that was impossible to reach. The tower was surrounded by a dense demonic aura. It was purple-black in color as if it was real. It was swimming around the tower like fish. The tower had 9 floors, and each floor had 9 windows. In the dim light of every window, there seemed to be a figure hanging there. Zhuowen stopped in his tracks. He looked at the 9-storied pagoda in front of him with a bewildered expression. What is this? What a dense, demonic aura. This thing doesn't belong to the human race at all. Fire Plume's beautiful eyes were filled with shock as she looked at the 9-story pagoda in front of her. Although Steel Plume didn't say anything, It was clear from his serious expression that Steel Plume was no less shocked than Fire Plume. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. His divine sense passed through the tower's windows, and when it reached inside, he found that there were corpses hanging from each window. Moreover, none of the corpses belonged to the human race. Some of them had the body of a lion, the head of an ox, the tail of a snake, the head of a dog, the body of a human, the winged man, and so on. Moreover, the corpses that appeared in the 9-story pagoda all exuded an aura that made Zhuowen tremble with fear. Zhuowen could not imagine how terrifying and powerful these corpses were when they were alive to possess such a powerful aura even after death. Zhuowen soon noticed the top floor of the pagoda. At the top of the pagoda, Zhuowen found 2 figures slowly crawling towards the top of the pagoda. Zhuowen was no stranger to these 2 figures. They were the green-haired mummy and Bloodscale. The moment he saw Bloodscale, Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He knew that Bloodscale had completely broken off their master-servant relationship. As for why the master-servant contract on Bloodscale was broken, it probably had something to do with the green-haired mummy. The moment he discovered these 2 people, Zhuowen also discovered that there was a round bead emitting a faint blue light inlaid on the top of the pagoda. The light in this dark space was all emitted from this round bead. The faint blue light emitted a strange aura and sound, giving people a sense of coldness. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that this round bead was extraordinary. He also faintly felt that this round bead had an inseparable connection with the pagoda. Once this round bead was taken away, something terrible would happen to the pagoda. Thinking of this, Zhuowen jumped up and rushed towards the top of the pagoda. However, the moment he reached the top of the pagoda, he felt an unprecedented gravity crushing his body, causing him to fall down involuntarily. Zhuowen finally understood why the green-haired mummy and Bloodscale wanted to climb up the pagoda. The gravity was too strong. Even if Zhuowen used all his skills, he couldn't rely on his divine power to fly up. He could only climb up like a mortal. The 2 of you, don't touch that round bead. With no other choice, Zhuowen could only shout loudly, hoping to stop the 2 corpses from approaching the bead. The green-haired mummy and Bloodscale paused for a moment and looked down at Zhuowen. Then they turned around and continued climbing. Zhuowen's face was gloomy. He knew that the green-haired mummy should know the origin of this pagoda. Moreover, this guy should have come to the origin grounds for this pagoda. Although Zhuowen wanted to stop the 2, he knew that he couldn't make it in time. He could only watch as the green-haired mummy walked to the top of the pagoda and reached out to take down the round bead. The moment the round bead was taken down, the temperature of the entire space suddenly dropped. A dull atmosphere filled the air, as if the surrounding atmosphere was suddenly suppressed by some invisible force. Zhuowen's face changed drastically. He quickly pulled Fire Plume and Steel Plume back. The green-haired mummy at the top of the pagoda grabbed Bloodscale and threw him away. Then Zhuowen saw Bloodscale scream and explode into a cloud of blood mist. The green-haired mummy took advantage of the moment when Bloodscale exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Then it completely left the pagoda and rushed into the darkness behind the pagoda. Soon it disappeared. Zhuowen looked at the green-haired mummy that had already disappeared and cursed in his heart. He was sure that Bloodscale was used by the green-haired mummy as a scapegoat in the end. However, Zhuowen didn't have so many thoughts. Instead, he focused on the 9-story pagoda in front of him. Ever since the bead was taken down from the top of the tower, Zhuowen clearly felt that the surrounding atmosphere had become much more oppressive. It was as if something invisible was pressing down on his heart, causing his heart to beat faster and he to feel suffocated. It was as if a terrifying force was about to be released by this 9-story pagoda. Roar! Roar! Then a heart-palpitating roar erupted from the 9-story pagoda. Chapter 2671. Chapter 2671. New Oasis. Let's go! Zhuowen didn't dare to stay any longer. The uneasiness in his heart urged him to leave this place immediately. Therefore, He immediately regained his senses and pulled Steel Plume and Fire Plume towards the passage behind them. He knew that the darkness behind the 9-story pagoda, which was the direction the green-haired corpse had gone, should be the exit to the land of origin. However, he didn't dare to approach the 9-story pagoda. He was afraid that once he got close to the pagoda, he might not be able to return. Fortunately, the Panga banner didn't only give him one exit. There was still another one. However, it was said that the teleportation array at this exit was somewhat damaged, and the teleportation effect would be slightly different. It could be said that the teleportation array was risky. However, compared to the terrifying 9-story pagoda, Zhuowen felt that this little risk was still acceptable. Roar! 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 As Zhuowen continued to flee, Zhuowen discovered that the roars behind him were getting sharper and more terrifying. Every time the roars reached his ears, they seemed to be able to shake his soul, causing it to tremble. Fire Plume and Steel Plume also reacted and followed closely behind Zhuowen. Hearing the terrifying roars behind them with lingering fear, they asked, "Brother Zhua, what exactly is that 9-story pagoda behind us? It seems like some terrifying existence has been born inside." Zhuowen shook his head and said uneasily, "I don't know what it is either. However, I know that it's definitely an inauspicious thing inside. Now that the bead that sealed this inauspicious thing has been taken away, the thing inside should be coming out soon. We can't fight it, otherwise we'll die a horrible death." Fire Plume and Steel Plume nodded repeatedly. Although they hadn't come into contact with the existence inside the 9-story pagoda, they could tell from the terrifying roars that the thing inside was definitely not something they could deal with. Zhuowen was already cursing the green-haired corpse in his heart. If he had known that this green-furred corpse was here to cause trouble, he wouldn't have allowed it to follow him. Now, this guy had entered the land of origin and released an unknown powerful creature. This was a trap for him. "Brother Zhua, the exit should be behind the 9-story pagoda, right? If we go back now, won't we be trapped inside?" Fire Plume was extremely intelligent. She quickly recalled the direction that the green-furred corpse had fled in and revealed a worried expression. "Don't worry, I know of another exit, but the teleportation array at that exit isn't complete. The teleportation might not be very effective, so—" Zhuowen said, "We can only try our best now." Steel Plume smiled bitterly. Zhuowen nodded and remained silent. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, a thunderous sound came from behind. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He grabbed Fire Plume and Steel Plume and threw out a punch. The full power of the 2-star Pengu's sacred body was unleashed. Boom! The fist force collided with the astral wind behind him. Zhuowen's expression suddenly changed. The astral wind was so terrifying that it made Zhuowen feel as small as a mortal facing a towering mountain. Zhuowen then spat out a mouthful of blood. He immediately grabbed Fire Plume and Steel Plume and kept retreating. They continued to flee into the depths of the land of origin. Zhuowen didn't even have time to see what had attacked him. After throwing out a punch, he only thought of running away. He had a hunch that once the unknown thing behind him caught up, it would be difficult for him to escape. Fortunately, after Zhuowen threw out a punch, the unknown thing behind him seemed to be afraid of the power of Zhuowen's Pengu's sacred body. It didn't chase too closely and followed closely behind Zhuowen. In the process of escaping, Zhuowen immediately swallowed a healing elixir. However, he didn't stop or slow down at all. He was afraid that if he slowed down, the thing behind him would catch up. Fire Plume and Steel Plume were already scared out of their wits. Although Steel Plume was strong, he could feel that the thing behind him was much stronger than them. He didn't have the courage to fight at all. Zhuowen only dared to attack because he felt that the Pengu's sacred body had a restraining effect on the thing behind him. That was why Zhuowen dared to attack. However, Zhuowen neglected the fact that the thing behind him was so powerful. Even if the thing was afraid of Zhuowen's Pengu's sacred body, it could still seriously injure Zhuowen. Zhuowen no longer dared to stop and fight with the thing behind him. Instead, he ran desperately. Soon, Zhuowen followed the route in his mind and came to another exit. It was an extremely remote stone room. The stone room even looked a little dilapidated. It was obvious that no one had used it for a long time. On the floor of the stone room, there was an extremely complicated magic array. This magic array was a teleportation array. However, there was a hole in the upper left corner of the teleportation array. The hole was very small. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see it. Obviously, this teleportation array had a flaw. Although it was very small, it had a great impact on the teleportation effect. Zhuowen's face was a little ugly. He was a divine array master, so he had a much deeper understanding of teleportation arrays than ordinary people. The teleportation array was the most complicated and rigorous magic array. There was absolutely no room for any flaws. Even a small flaw would cause irreparable consequences. It would have a profound impact on the teleportation effect. There was a small hole in the teleportation array in front of him. Zhuowen knew that even if it could be activated, there would be a big problem with the teleportation. The biggest problem was that he might be crushed into pieces by the space-time during the teleportation process before he could be teleported out. However, he had no choice now. The thing behind him was getting closer and closer. He couldn't afford to waste too much time. I can only fight with my life on the line. Zhuowen sighed. He immediately took out a supreme-grade godstone and placed it on the teleportation array. He immediately activated the teleportation array. Blazing light spread around the teleportation array. Then, the teleportation array enveloped Zhuowen, Fire Plume, and Steel Plume. With a flash of light, the three of them disappeared on the spot. At the same time, the stone room was blasted to pieces. A huge black shadow that was over 30 meters tall charged in from the outside. This black shadow had scarlet eyes. It had a lion's body and a human face. Its huge palms slammed into the ground, causing the ground to tremble as if there was an earthquake. If Zhuowen was here, he would definitely recognize this monster with a lion's body and a human face. Wasn't it one of the 81 corpses in the 9-story tower? In the cold, starry sky, an invisible ripple appeared. Then a figure appeared out of thin air. Chapter 2672. Eastern Emperor Tai, the land of origin, still suppresses the corpses of the 99 great sorcerers. These poor great sorcerers were all legendary figures in the world before they died. But after they died, they were refined into a 9-story demon tower and suppressed by the demon pearl forever. But now this demon pearl is mine. With this demon pearl, I can recover half of my strength. When I go to the untainted heavenly realm, I will teach those ignorant juniors a lesson. 12 great sorcerers. I will take care of the untainted heavenly realm in the future. When I take control of the untainted heavenly realm, I will attack the Xianmi heavenly realm and destroy the scum of the human race. The green-haired mummy laughed and disappeared. As for Zhuowen, the green-haired mummy thought he was dead for sure. Although it was a pity that Zhuowen had the Panga banner, the mummy strength was not enough now. If he went in again, he might not be able to get out. At the former site of the 6 Desires heavenly domain, in the sealed land that led to the Eldritch heavenly domain, a bald man in a loose robe was forming a seal with his hands. Mysterious lines flew out from his palms and landed on the sealed land. The light of the lines gradually disappeared, and the bald man looked at the seal he had cast with satisfaction. He smiled slightly and said, "With my lifetime of array Tao, unless someone at the 3rd step of Tao confirmation comes, they won't be able to break this seal." The bald man admired the seal in front of him with satisfaction. Then he turned his head and looked at the distant starry sky. A stream of light came from the distant starry sky. It was extremely fast and soon landed in the bald man's palm. It was a glittering flying sword. A flying sword message? The 3rd prince is here too, and he is in the great Brahma heavenly realm. The bald man put away the flying sword message and frowned slightly. The bald man was Master Yuan Hui, the eternal level formation master sent by the Huangji family in the Xianmi heavenly realm. A divine array master of this level, even in the Xianmi heavenly domain, was a highly regarded existence. Even Tao Palace level forces had to be respectful to such an existence and did not dare to slight them. The third prince mentioned by Master Yuan Hui was the third son of the head of the Huangji family. The bald man frowned because the third prince was truly a hedonistic son of a wealthy family. Although the third prince's talent was indeed very good, he did not like to cultivate. What he did every day was to seek pleasure and pleasure in front of him. Even so, the third prince's cultivation base had been nurtured by the rich resources of the Huangji family, so he had successfully attained the Tao and become a Tao Yuan master. Of course, a Tao Yuan master like the third prince, who relied on resources to forcefully advance, was naturally much weaker than an ordinary Tao Yuan master. However, the third prince had the support of the Huangji aristocratic family. Usually, he did not need to do anything in a battle. The experts sent by the Huangji aristocratic family would help him settle it. Forget it, the matter of the seal has been resolved. Let's go take a look at the third prince. Perhaps he might bring us some news from the Huangji family. It would be best if you have specific information about the land of origin. Master Yuan Hui shook his head, put away the flying sword, and left the place. Not long after Master Yuan Hui left, the green-haired mummy came to a place not far from the seal. When the green-haired mummy saw the seal that led to the eldritch heavenly realm, he frowned and said coldly, "Someone actually strengthened the seal here. Fortunately, it's only an eternal level seal. If it's a seal that surpasses the eternal level, I'm afraid I won't be able to go to the eldritch heavenly realm." The green-haired mummy did not immediately break the seal. He was not good at seals. He found a remote meteorite near the seal, opened up a cave, and planned to go into seclusion. He planned to absorb all the energy of the demon pearl. After his strength recovered to a certain extent, he would forcibly break the seal here. The blue earth was now shrouded in a huge demonic aura. An incomparably huge pagoda appeared in the Kunlun mountain range of earth. This huge pagoda covered the sky and floated above the earth, causing countless creatures on the earth to panic. However, other than emitting a horrifying roar, the huge tower did not launch any attacks. Even so, the extremely massive demonic aura had affected countless living beings on earth. This huge pagoda floated above the earth for about 3 days, then broke through the sky and left. Wherever this huge pagoda passed, a terrifying demonic aura filled the air. In a short time, the entire Huaxia heavenly realm was shrouded in demonic aura. The creatures affected by the demonic aura gradually found that their physical strength was constantly increasing. Whether it was mortals or cultivators, they could clearly feel the changes in their physiques. However, some people also found that their minds were becoming more and more blurred while their physiques were changing. Cultivators were better off as their willpower was stronger, so they could still retain their rationality. However, some mortals were completely affected by the demonic aura and lost their rationality. But as the demonic aura became denser, cultivators were also gradually affected by it. They lost their rationality and became monsters that only knew how to kill. Moreover, these monsters that had lost their rationality were in awe and fear of the 9-story pagoda floating in the Huaxia heavenly realm. As long as it was an order from the celestial wizard corpse in the 9-story pagoda, these monsters would not resist. Outside the Huaxia heavenly realm, Zhuowen barely managed to stabilize his body. His face was pale, but his eyes were staring blankly at the scene in front of him. The entire Huaxia heavenly realm is controlled by that 9-story pagoda? What the hell is that? Zhuowen was in disbelief. Fire Plume and Steel Plume also appeared behind Zhuowen in a sorry state. The two of them also looked at the Huaxia heavenly realm that was shrouded in demonic aura and could not be seen clearly. Is that the legendary demonic pagoda in the land of origin? Is it the demonic pagoda that was refined by the legendary great wizard Dong Huang Tai? Fire Plume said in shock. Dong Huang Tai? Zhuowen looked at Fire Plume in confusion. Fire Plume calmed down and said calmly, "Ever since Pangu created the universe and turned it into the starry sky, we entered the desolate era. In that era, there were hundreds of races, but only 3 races were the most powerful. These 3 races are the human race, the wizard race, and the monster race. The human race and the wizard race fought and split the desolate heavenly realm, which became the Xianmi heavenly realm. Although the wizard race was weakened during the conflict with the human race, they are still in charge of the desolate heavenly realm. Only the monster race disappeared during that conflict. However, I once heard that the monster race once had a shocking genius named Donghuang Tai. This Donghuang Tai was extremely daring. He secretly collected the corpses of great wizards in the desolate era and refined them into corpse puppets. He collected them into his natal demonic artifact, the 9-story pagoda. Chapter 2673. Rage Fire Plume let out a sigh. Brother Zhua, if I'm not wrong, there should be a great monster like the Eastern Emperor Tai slumbering in the land of origin. Now that the green-furred corpse has taken the demonic pearl, the Eastern Emperor Tai has awakened. I'm afraid that the Eastern Emperor Tai is planning to revive the monster race with the 8 heavens as his base. Zhua Wen's heart trembled. He had seen the terror of one of the corpse puppets in the 9-floored tower. He was no match for it. Not to mention that there were 81 corpse puppets in the 9-floored tower, and there was the even more terrifying Eastern Emperor Tai. Zhou Wen knew that he was no match for the Eastern Emperor Tai. He would be sending himself to his death. It won't be long before the 8 heavens turn into a monster realm. Adding on the fact that the great desolate heavenly realm is eyeing us, we can't stay here any longer. Brother Zhua, why don't you come with us to the Xianmi heavenly realm? Steel Plume persuaded. That's the only thing we can do now. I can only rely on the 2 of you to go to the heavenly moat. Zhua Wen cupped his fists. Fire Plume and Steel Plume naturally agreed. Zhua Wen had saved them twice, and Zhua Wen was very strong. His talent must be terrifying. If he went with them to the heavenly moat, they would have the chance to invite Zhua Wen to join their purple-red house. At that time, their purple-red house would have a chance to rise again. Zhua Wen took a final look at the Huaxia heavenly realm that had turned into a monster realm. He had a feeling that the 8 heavens would be in chaos soon. He had to return to the great Brahma heavenly realm immediately and bring Chen Shui and his friends away from this place. Amidst the rolling demonic qi, the 9-story tower floated quietly. Inside the tower, a man in a black robe sat cross-legged. His entire body was wrapped in black cloth, and only a pair of bright eyes could be seen. I've finally awakened. I, the Eastern Emperor Tai, will revive the monster race. Also, where did the person who woke me up come from? He has an aura that is even more ancient than mine. Forget it, forget it. Although the demonic pearl is very important to me. Since it was this person who woke me up, then there's no harm in taking the demonic pearl as a reward. Donghuang Tai closed his eyes again and activated the 9-storied pagoda, spreading it toward the other heavens. The 8 heavens had long been his territory. When he woke up, it would be time to transform this place. At that time, he would turn this place into a demon realm and make it his territory. Once the demon domain was formed, Donghuang Tai would have the capital to fight against the Xianmi heavenly domain and the prehistoric heavenly domain. At that time, he would not have to be chased out of the prehistoric heavenly domain like a stray dog. As for Zhou Wen and the others, they were like ants in his eyes. Since he had not killed them previously, he naturally would not make a move to hunt down ant-like fellows. Zhou Wen worked day and night and finally arrived at the borders of the great Brahma region. However, Zhou Wen felt extremely uneasy in his heart. This was because after he had sent a message to Mu Qinxue, he had not received any response from Mu Qinxue. Zhou Wen had even sent a message to Tong Qimei, Magatama, Yuezu, and the others, but there was no response. This made Zhou Wen have a faint premonition. When Zhuowen arrived near the Wenshui Palace, he found that the stone statue that everyone had built had collapsed. The Wenshui Palace, which was originally bustling with noise and excitement, had become extremely deserted. What happened? Fire Plume looked at the deserted surroundings, and her beautiful eyes were also filled with surprise. Big brother, Zhuo! Suddenly, a soft cry attracted Zhuowen's attention. He saw that in a dilapidated meteorite not far from the Wenshui Palace, a figure covered in black cloth was looking in Zhuowen's direction. Zhuowen landed beside the figure and realized that the figure covered in black cloth was Tong Chimei. When Zhuowen was about to speak, he was pulled by Tong Chimei. Then they flew away from the Wenshui Palace. However, their path was quickly blocked by two figures. How dare you! His Majesty the Crown Prince has already instructed that without his permission, no one is allowed to come near here. You are simply... One of the two figures was a thin and tall man. His voice was a little sharp. However, before he could finish his words, he stared blankly at the white-clothed youth beside Tong Chimei. He could not finish his words. The moment Zhuowen saw the two people in front of him, killing intent surged in his eyes, because these two people were two of the 20 Heavenly Tao Masters who had submitted to him back then. These two people were already his servants, yet they still dared to berate his people like this. They had nothing to fear. You are courting death. Zhuowen snorted coldly and immediately communicated with his mind, intending to destroy their souls. However, Zhuowen quickly realized that although he communicated with his mind, the two people in front of him were safe and sound. Haha, His Majesty the Crown Prince was right. The slave contract that this person placed on us is no longer effective. Quickly inform His Majesty the Crown Prince. The thin and tall man was ecstatic. He immediately took out a talisman and crushed it. Then, the two of them immediately retreated, not daring to get too close to Zhuowen. At that time, Zhuowen had single-handedly fought more than 40 Heavenly Tao Masters. What kind of grace was that? Until now, it was deeply imprinted in their memories. They did not dare to fight such an expert head-on. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with killing intent. He immediately took out the sacrificial death sword. His powerful consciousness even executed the soul kill, causing the two people's minds to go blank for a moment. Then, the sacrificial death sword instantly pierced through their foreheads and destroyed their souls. Big brother Zhuo, let's run. It will be too late if we don't leave now. After Zhuowen killed the two Heavenly Tao Masters, Tong Chimei did not show the slightest bit of joy. Instead, she was deeply worried and urged Zhuowen to leave. Zhuowen placed his right hand on Tong Chimei's shoulder. When he wanted to calm her down, his expression changed drastically, and he removed the veil on Tong Chimei's face. Tong Chimei cried out in shock. Unfortunately, her hand was not as fast as Zhuowen's. After the black veil fell, a face covered in scars appeared in front of Zhuowen's eyes. Although Tong Chimei could not be considered beautiful, she had a heroic spirit, and her appearance was even better. However, Tong Chimei's heroic face no longer existed. Instead, it was replaced by an ugly face covered in scars. Moreover, Zhuowen could sense that the scars on Tong Chimei's face contained the aura of the Tao. With Tong Chimei's strength, it was impossible for her to heal the scars. Clearly, someone had intentionally left the scars on Tong Chimei's face. Chimei, who did this? The anger in Zhuowen's heart could not be contained. To a woman, appearance was the most important thing. It was the same for cultivators. Now, Tong Chimei's appearance was ruined. Zhuowen even found that the divine power in Tong Chimei's body was so weak that it was negligible. He knew that Tong Chimei's cultivation had also been destroyed. Chapter 2674. Huangji, family Tong Chimei, quickly lowered her head, not daring to look at Zhuowen. She secretly wiped her tears and said, "Big brother Zhuo, let's go." The prince that those two were talking about is not someone we can afford to offend. They are too strong. Fire Plume and Steel Plume followed behind Zhuowen. When they heard Tong Chimei's words, they seemed to have thought of something, and their expressions changed. Fire Plume quickly asked, "Miss Tong, the prince you mentioned, could it be the prince of the Huangji family?" Tong Chimei nodded and said, "Yes, when that prince came, he said that he was the third prince of the Huangji family. Moreover, the people around the third prince are too strong. I heard that there is a bodyguard of the Master of Destiny, who is already a powerhouse in the second step of the Tao confirming realm. He is an existence that can cover the sky with one hand." Fire Plume and Steel Plume's expressions changed. They never thought that the third prince of the Huangji family would also come here. This fellow was a famous playboy in the host region. Moreover, he was ruthless and cynical. Moreover, this fellow had a terrifying powerhouse like the Master of Destiny by his side. This kind of powerhouse could kill them as easily as flipping his hand. "Brother Zhua, we have to leave this place quickly. The third prince of the Huangji family is not someone we can afford to offend." Fire Plume quickly said. Zhuowen took a deep breath and ignored Fire Plume. Instead, he looked at Tong Chimei and said, "Chimei, where is Qin Shui?" Tong Chimei's expression changed, and she said with a bit of disappointment, "When the third prince came to the Great Brahma region, he was fine and didn't make any big movements. However, elder sister Qin Shui had just broken through, and a phoenix phenomenon appeared. Then the third prince muttered about the phoenix bloodline, so he captured elder sister Qin Shui." "Geji!" Zhuowen clenched his fist and said 3 words in a row. However, the killing intent in his eyes became even stronger. She actually possesses the phoenix bloodline. Furthermore, after breaking through, she was able to produce a phoenix vision. If the phoenix people of the primitive heaven domain were to find out about this, they would probably worship her as a goddess, Fire Plume said with a strange look in her eyes. Zhuowen did not think too much about the phoenix people that Fire Plume mentioned. He looked at Tong Chimei and asked, "Chimei, where's Qin Shui right now?" "Haha, in this prince's golden house. A mere ant actually has the right to show such anger to this crown prince?" An untimely voice sounded. Soon after, Zhuowen's group was surrounded by over a dozen figures. At the front of the encirclement, a man dressed in a golden threaded robe was sitting on a splendid carriage, flying through the air. The 2 drivers in front of the carriage were 2 white-haired old men. However, from the light in their eyes, it could be seen that these 2 old men were not simple people. Zhuowen could tell with a single glance that these 2 old men should be at the primordial chaos lord level. As for the people around them, they were the people that Zhuowen had subdued in the past. The man sitting in the carriage was naturally the Huang Ji family's third prince, Huang Zhe that Fire Plume had mentioned. In the carriage, Huang Zhe casually picked up a grape beside him and put it into his mouth. He completely ignored Zhuowen and looked at Tong Chimei, who was beside Zhuowen. Zhuowen's aura was too weak. He was only in the life and death boundary. This kind of cultivation was like an ant in Huang Zhe's eyes. He was too lazy to even spare him a glance. "Little beauty, how did you escape when I wasn't paying attention? I still have many methods that I haven't used on you yet. Do you hate me that much? Once I'm hated, I'll lose my mind. At that time, I don't know what I'll do to you." Huang Zhe looked at Tong Chimei with a teasing look in his eyes. His voice was even more unrestrained. Tong Chimei trembled in fear. She clearly remembered the scene of her falling into Huang Zhe's hands. Zhuowen coldly looked at Huang Zhe and said, "Qin Shui is in your hands? And the scar on Chimei's body was also caused by you?" Huang Zhe indifferently glanced at Zhuowen. Then he waved his hand and said, "All of you attack. This ant is too noisy. Kill him to shut him up." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Although those people were a little afraid of Zhuowen, they were more afraid of Huang Zhe. After all, Huang Zhe's fierce reputation was out there. As people from the Eastern Path region of the Xian, Mi Heavenly Domain, they had naturally heard of him. Compared to Zhuowen, they were even more unwilling to offend Huang Zhe. Zhuowen took a step forward. The Thunder Fire Sword, Blood Immortal Sword, and Death Sacrifice Sword swept out at the same time. They turned into 3 streams of light that constantly danced. At this moment, Zhuowen did not hold back at all. The 3 heavenly Tao grade divine swords were like weapons of death. Every time they danced, they would reap a life. Soon, those people were all killed by Zhuowen. Huang Zhe narrowed his eyes and finally glanced at Zhuowen. He said, "An ant at the life and death boundary can actually kill a heavenly Tao master. It seems like your talent is not bad. How about this? I'll give you a chance. Kneel before me and be my dog, and I won't kill you today. Moreover, I'll even give you a chance to enter the Huang Ji clan and let you have a great fortune." Huang Zhe glanced at Zhuowen from above. It was as if having Zhuowen become his dog was a great honor for Zhuowen. Fire Plume frowned. She felt that Huang Zhe's words were too arrogant. In her opinion, a genius like Zhuowen needed to be taken seriously even if he entered a Tao Palace level force. This Huang Zhe actually wanted him to be a dog. He was too arrogant. However, Fire Plume did not dare to refute Huang Zhe. After all, he had 2 primordial chaos experts protecting him. Moreover, he had the Huang Ji clan behind him. Fire Plume did not dare to say anything. Huang Zhe did not mind Zhuowen's silence. He looked at Fire Plume and Steel Plume and said indifferently, "Fire Plume from the Purple Red House?" Fire Plume did not dare to be negligent. She cupped her hands and said, "Yes." "The 2 of you are in cahoots with this ant?" Huang Zhe asked casually. However, there was a trace of killing intent and hostility in Huang Zhe's words. Fire Plume and Steel Plume naturally felt the hostility in Huang Zhe's tone. They could imagine that if they said that they were with Zhuowen, Huang Zhe would not let them off easily. Zhuowen looked coldly at Fire Plume and Steel Plume. In his opinion, Fire Plume and Steel Plume would not admit to being with him. After all, the force behind Huang Zhe was too strong. Fire Plume and Steel Plume would not take such a risk. However, to Zhuowen's surprise, Fire Plume openly admitted to being with him and even pleaded with Huang Zhe. "Crown Prince Huang Zhe, Zhuowen is a disciple of our Purple Red House. He did not know your identity just now. I hope you won't forgive him. We will immediately take him away from here." Fire Plume said in a neither servile nor overbearing tone. Steel Plume's eyes flashed with worry, but he did not say anything. He knew that Fire Plume had already made up her mind. There was no point in him saying anything. Chapter 2675. Huang Zhe, Fire Plume, you've got guts. Although your Purple Red House is strong, it's nothing in front of my Huang Ji family. If our Huang Ji family wants to destroy your Purple Red House, we only need to move our fingers. I'm in a bad mood right now. If you don't want to die, accompany me for a year and be my maid. Then I'll set you free." Huang Zhe sneered. Fire Plume's face turned cold. She took a few steps back with Steel Plume. Zhuowen slowly took a step forward. He looked at Huang Zhe and said, "Didn't I just ask you a question? Are you ignoring my words now?" Huang Zhe was stunned. He looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. He didn't expect that this ant in front of him would have the courage to preach to him. Was he courting death? But soon, a cruel smile appeared on Huang Zhe's face. He said to the old man on the right, "Old White, kill this arrogant brat." The old man called "Old." White didn't say a word. He stomped his right foot and flew towards Zhuowen like a great rock spreading its wings. Old White's right hand turned into a claw. Qi swirled around him like a hunting hawk as he grabbed at Zhuowen. "Be careful." Hu Yu's expression changed slightly. Old White was a master of primordial chaos, although Zhuowen was strong. She didn't think that Zhuowen would be able to gain much of an advantage against such a master. Steel Plume's eyes lit up. He remembered that Zhuowen had destroyed the flaming bat in the origin ground. If Zhuowen used that move, he might be able to kill Old White. However, Steel Plume could also see that Zhuowen's move was his final trump card, and it consumed a lot of energy. Moreover, Huang Zhe had more than one Lord of Primordial Chaos beside him. Steel Plume was worried that Zhuowen would be at a disadvantage. Zhuowen's eyes were calm as the three divine swords circled around him. He did not use the divine swords to attack. Instead, he took a step forward and punched out with his right fist like a dragon. The power of the two-star Pangu sacred body burst out. Ka ka ka! When Zhuowen's fist finally collided with Old Bai's claw, terrifying ripples spread out. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and retreated several dozen steps. Every step he took caused the surrounding space to tremble faintly and the laws to become chaotic. Elder Bai's figure swayed, and he took a few steps back. He looked at the white-clothed young man in front of him in shock. He really couldn't imagine how a mere two extremes of life and death could withstand his all-out attack. Moreover, Elder Bai faintly discovered that the strength of the white-clothed young man did not come entirely from his divine power, but from his powerful physical body. Huang Zhe's expression also changed, but the killing intent in his eyes became even more intense. Initially, I wanted to make an ant like you my dog, but since you don't know what's good for you, you can forget about living then. Old Bai, there's no need to hold back. Kill this ant, Huang Zhe said coldly. Elder Bai nodded slightly and shouted softly. He took a step forward, surrounded by Taoist rhymes, and blasted out another claw. The power of Elder Bai's claw was far stronger than before. Obviously, Elder Bai had not exerted all his strength just now. The peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos, Steel Plume, looked solemn. After Elder Bai exerted all his strength, he finally knew that Elder Bai's cultivation realm was at the peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos. It could be said that Elder Bai was far stronger than the ordinary Lord of Primordial Chaos. He was a little worried about whether Zhuowen could deal with Elder Bai. Back then, the Flaming Bat's strength was also at Lord of Primordial Chaos, but it was not at the peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos. It was just a beast and did not have so many means like a cultivator. Now, Elder Bai was a knowledgeable cultivator, and his means were much stronger than the Flaming Bat's. Moreover, he was at the peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos, which was much stronger than the Flaming Bat's. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly. He obviously also discovered that Elder Bai was at the peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos. At the same time, Zhuowen's attention was fixed on the other old man beside Huang Zhe. He knew that this old man should also be at the peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos. Apart from these two old men, Zhuowen did not find the Destiny Master expert mentioned by Tong Chimei around Huang Zhe. Obviously, that expert might have something to do, and was not here. Zhuowen was very confident in his spiritual consciousness. Even if the Heaven's Mandate Master was hiding in the surroundings, his spiritual consciousness would still be able to see everything clearly. Since he could not find anything, it meant that the Heaven's Mandate Master was not around. In other words, as long as he could kill the two guards beside Huang Zhe, who were at the peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos, Huang Zhe would have nothing to rely on. Zhuowen knew very well that with his current two-star Pangu sacred body, he could at most tangle with Elder Bai. It was unrealistic to kill Elder Bai, who was at the peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos, unless he used the profound meaning of the Panga banner. However, he also knew that he only had one chance to use the profound meaning. If he killed Elder Bai, he would inevitably be exhausted. At that time, he would definitely die if he faced another expert at the peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos. Therefore, Zhuowen's plan was to let the two experts at the peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos join forces to deal with him. Then he would use the profound meaning to kill them in one fell swoop. This was his only chance. If he failed, he was afraid that he would have to use the space-time key to teleport him into the space-time temple to escape Huang Zhe's killing move. Bang! 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 In an instant, Elder Bai, who was wrapped in an even more terrifying power, fiercely collided with Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen's aura was not obvious, His two-star Pangus sacred body was extremely powerful and terrifying. Although elder by suppressed Zhuowen, he could not defeat Zhuowen at all, let alone kill Zhuowen. The more Huang Zhe watched, the more he frowned. In the end, he looked impatiently at Zhuowen and Elder Bai, who were still tangling with each other. He looked at the gray-robed elder on the other side of the carriage and said, "Elder Wu, you also attack together and get rid of this ant as soon as possible." The other, gray-robed elder nodded and took a step forward. Like a meteor, he directly hit Zhuowen. The powerful aura of the peak of Lord of Primordial Chaos was released unreservedly from his body. "Huangze, aren't you too despicable? How could you let two peak experts of Lord of Primordial Chaos join forces to deal with a cultivator in the two extremes of life and death?" Fire Plume could not help but scold. Huang Zhe coldly glanced at Fire Plume and said, "Fire Plume, even if your father was in front of me, he would not dare to scold me like this. I have changed my mind. When I get rid of this guy, you will be my slave for life. Even if I get tired of playing with you, you will not be able to leave my hand." Fire Plume trembled with anger and fear. Huang Zhe was famous in the Eastern Path domain of the Xian, Mi heavenly domain, for being a cruel playboy. If she really fell into his hands, she would suffer a fate worse than death. At this moment, the gray-robed elder, Elder Wu, had also joined the team besieging Zhuowen. The joint forces of the two peak experts of Lord of Primordial Chaos were so powerful that terrifying energy ripples appeared in the surrounding millions of miles of starry sky. Chapter 2676. Phoenix Bloodline Bang. 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 Old Bai and Old Wu took advantage of the gap and suddenly took a step forward. Their attacks poured down on Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen groaned and retreated continuously. He even spat out a mouthful of blood, and his aura became extremely weak. Huang Zhe sneered and revealed a trace of cruelty when he saw this. Although the white-clothed young man was clearly only at the extremities of life and death, he was very surprised that he could fight against Master Han Yuan at the peak. Even he felt that such a genius was amazing. However, he also knew that a genius who had not been able to grow up was nothing. Didn't he still die without a burial ground under his orders? Thinking of this, Huang Zhe felt even more complacent. However, what happened next completely stunned Huang Zhe. Old Bai and the 5 elders, who had originally repelled Zhuowen and wanted to follow up with a victorious attack to completely eliminate Zhuowen with their next move, suddenly stopped when their attacks were about to land on Zhuowen. Then, the 2 old men screamed in horror, and their bodies were cut in half by a blade of light. Moreover, the moment their bodies were cut in half, their bodies were annihilated into nothingness under the light of the blade of light. They completely disappeared before Huang Zhe's eyes. What's going on? Huang Zhe rubbed his eyes. Indeed, Old Bai and Old Wu had disappeared before his eyes just like that. He also discovered that the white-clothed young man Zhuowen's right hand was covered in a layer of blade of light. It was this arm covered in blade of light that had passed through the 2 old men's bodies and completely killed them in one go. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood and hurriedly took out several healing pills from his small world. At the same time, he took out a high-grade Heavenly Way origin crystal and circulated his meridians to absorb the energy of the crystal to recover the energy in his body. Earlier, he had been waiting for the moment when Old Bai and Old Wu attacked him together to use the profound Qi blade. The power of the profound Qi blade did not disappoint Zhuowen. It easily killed Old Wu and Old Bai. However, it was extremely taxing on him. It was as if his body was completely drained. Waves of weakness assaulted his mind. Fortunately, he had many Heavenly Way origin crystals on him. When he used the sky-splitting blade earlier, he had used many high-grade Heavenly Way origin crystals to replenish himself. That was how he was able to kill Old Wu and Old Bai in a single strike. Steel Plume, Fire Plume, help me stall Huang Zhe. Zhuowen hadn't recovered from the moment he killed Old Wu and Old Bai. He had to kill Huang Zhe before he could react. Right now, he was too weak and did not have the strength to fight, so he could only ask for help from Steel Plume and Fire Plume. Steel Plume and Fire Plume also knew the severity of the situation. They knew that they had thoroughly offended Huang Zhe and were now on the same boat as Zhuowen. They had to keep Huang Zhe alive. Otherwise, if Huang Zhe returned alive, they and the purple red chamber behind them would be finished. After all, the Huangji family was too big and much stronger than the purple red chamber. They could not afford to offend them. You dare! Huang Zhe looked at Steel Plume and Fire Plume, who were blocking his way. His face changed slightly and he trembled with anger. Because Huang Zhe's cultivation was forcefully raised with resources, and he did not have much combat experience, he was quickly subdued by Steel Plume. Even the spirit ring on his hand was taken away by Steel Plume. Brother Zhua, this is your spoil. Take it. Steel Plume took Huang Zhe's spirit ring and handed it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded and accepted the spirit ring without hesitation. He was the one who killed Old Bai and Old Wu, so this spoil of war belonged to him. Therefore, he did not refuse. However, when he checked Huang Zhe's spirit ring, Zhuowen sucked in a breath of cold air. He found that Huang Zhe's spirit ring also contained a miniature world. Moreover, Huang Zhe's miniature world was much bigger than the one given to him by Steel Plume. The laws inside were also much more complete and advanced. Zhuowen even saw countless greenery in this miniature world. It was actually full of vitality. Zhuowen did not hesitate to replace the miniature world given to him by Steel Plume. He then erased Huang Zhe's imprint on this miniature world and put Huang Zhe's spirit ring on his finger. Huang Zhe was extremely wealthy. Zhuowen saw countless precious divine medicines and materials in Huang Zhe's miniature world. These divine medicines were much more than the ones he had seen before. Zhuowen knew that these divine medicines were enough for him to join forces and advance to the primordial chaos level. After all, with so many divine medicines and the Emperor Pill Fire's alchemy Tao comprehension, he would really be a pig if he couldn't advance to the primordial chaos level. Moreover, Zhuowen also found that there were many top-notch escape talismans in Huang Zhe's miniature world. If Huang Zhe used these talismans, Zhuowen might not be able to catch him. Obviously, Huang Zhe had no combat experience at all. After Old Wu and Old Bai were killed, he immediately panicked and didn't even think of taking out an escape talisman to escape. Of course, this also gave Zhuowen the opportunity to capture this fellow. Otherwise, if Huang Zhe managed to escape, it would definitely be a huge disaster for them. How dare you? Why aren't you letting me go? Do you want to offend the Huangji family? Huang Zhe panicked, and his voice was filled with panic. Since his debut, this was the first time he was caught in such a sorry state. Pa! Zhuowen came over and slapped Huang Zhe, causing the latter to be stunned. Zhuowen held Huang Zhe in one hand and said to Tong Chimei, "Chimei, do you know where Qin Shui is locked up?" Tong Chimei quickly said, "I know, but the place where elder sister Qin Shui is locked up has been sealed by the Master of Destiny. Bring me there first." Zhuowen said. Tong Chimei nodded and brought Zhuowen to the Wen Shui Palace. After a while, Zhuowen and the others arrived at Mu Qinshue's seclusion place. At this moment, Mu Qinshue's seclusion place had long been destroyed and turned into ruins. In the ruins, there were terrifying flames surging. The flames surged and formed an incomparably huge phoenix shadow. The phoenix shadow seemed to be real, and even the feathers on the phoenix's surface were clear as if they were real. Moreover, the fire phoenix's aura was extremely powerful, far more powerful than an ordinary master of heaven's path. Even an ordinary master of heaven's path might not be as powerful as the phoenix shadow. In the phoenix shadow, there was a beautiful figure sitting cross-legged. This beautiful figure was Mu Qinshui. At this moment, Mu Qinshue's Taoist rhymes were flowing around her body. Clearly, She had successfully become a master of heaven's path. Moreover, due to the special bloodline in her body, her aura was far from an ordinary master of heaven's path. It's indeed the phoenix bloodline. Moreover, it's such a powerful phoenix bloodline. If this woman enters the phoenix people's nirvana rebirth a few times, she might be even more heaven-defying. Chapter 2677. Zhou Dejuan came to the edge of the barrier and used the power of the Pangus sacred body to strike the barrier. He couldn't help but take a few steps back as he looked at the barrier in shock. The power contained in the barrier was far above that of the Hunyuan master. It seemed that Tong Chimei was right. The barrier should have been set up by a Heaven's Mandate Master. Zhuowen was glad that the Heaven's Mandate Master wasn't by Huang Zhe's side. Otherwise, he would have to fight with his life on the line. Although he still had the mysterious Ho Yi's divine arrow, he really wasn't sure if he could use it with his current strength. Even if he could use it, he would probably be half dead. How do I open this barrier? Zhuowen asked coldly as he lifted Huang Zhe. Huang Zhe looked on coldly and sneered. I think you'd better surrender. Not to mention that you can't afford to offend the Huangji clan. You'll all die when Zoda returns. If you don't want to die, let me go and I won't pursue the disrespect you've shown me. Crack. Unfortunately, as soon as Huang Zhe finished speaking, Zhuowen twisted Huang Zhe's right arm and said coldly, I'm asking you how to break this barrier. Huang Zhe screamed in agony, his face pale as he looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. Before Huang Zhe could react, he broke Huang Zhe's left arm again. Huang Zhe's back was covered in cold sweat and his heart was filled with fear. The white-clothed youth in front of him was a madman. He didn't care about the Huangji clan behind him at all. When Zhuowen was about to cripple Huang Zhe's legs, Huang Zhe was so frightened that he immediately struggled and said, I can break this barrier, but you have to let me go. Crack. Zhuowen sneered and broke Huang Zhe's right leg. He said, What right do you have to talk terms with me? If you don't want to continue suffering, then open this barrier. Every time Zhuowen broke Huang Zhe's limbs, the pain would be magnified in Huang Zhe's soul, making Huang Zhe feel as if he was better off dead. Even those with strong willpower could faint from the pain, let alone this cowardly Huang Zhe. Sure enough, when Zhuowen was about to break Huang Zhe's left leg, Huang Zhe's tears flowed down his face as he quickly begged for mercy, indicating that he was willing to open the barrier. Only then did Zhuowen stop. Zhuowen threw Huang Zhe to the ground. The latter struggled to raise his head and mumbled something that Zhuowen could not understand. After a while, Zhuowen discovered that the barrier around Mu Qinxue was slowly disappearing. Inside the enchantment, Mu Qinxue seemed to feel that the enchantment around her had disappeared. The raging flames gradually converged and merged into her body. Husband. Mu Qinxue opened her eyes. She was pleasantly surprised to find that the person standing in front of her was the Zhuowen she had been thinking about day and night. Zhuowen gently stroked Mu Qinxue's hair and said, Qinxue, we have to leave this place quickly. Also, where are Xiangjuan, Yuezhu, and Magatama? Other than me, everyone else in Wenxue Palace was killed by Huang Zhe. Yuezhu and Magatama are no exception, but little sister Xiangjuan and Palace Master Jingyan went to Xianmi Heavenly Domain with a force from Xianmi Heavenly Domain. Mu Qinxue's beautiful eyes dimmed. She quickly saw Tong Chimei not far away and quickly arrived in front of her. She held Tong Chimei's hands and said in a pleasantly surprised voice, Junior, Sister Chimei, you're still here. This is great. But very quickly, Mu Qinxue discovered that something was wrong. Tong Chimei's cultivation had been crippled, and with her divine sense, she discovered that Tong Chimei's face was covered with many hideous scars. Was this done by Huang Zhe? Mu Qinxue's expression changed slightly, and her beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent. Tong Chimei revealed a sorrowful expression. She only nodded silently. She knew that her cultivation had been crippled and her face was ruined. Her life was over. Zhuowen summoned the space-time roulette and lifted the half-dead Huang Zhe. Let's leave this place first. This Huang Zhe still has a master of destiny's bodyguard. We need to leave before that bodyguard returns. Mu Qinxue withdrew her killing intent and nodded. She brought everyone into the space-time roulette. When Zhuowen was about to activate the space-time roulette to leave, a strong sense of unease appeared in his heart. Zhuowen shouted and immediately summoned the Thunderfire Sword. He ordered Xiaohei to control the space-time roulette to leave this place. Zhuowen used all his might to activate the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique. In the blink of an eye, he used the 3 moves of the slaughtering Dao finger, slaughtering Dao palm, and slaughtering Dao hand. However, the moment these 3 moves were used, they were struck by an extremely powerful force. After a moment of stagnation, they completely collapsed and were annihilated. Zhuowen made use of this time and immediately used the space-time rules to disappear from the original space-time. The space-time roulette had already broken through the air and left. Husband, big brother, Zhuya. Before the people on the space-time roulette could react, they saw Zhuowen being completely annihilated by a wave of energy. This power was simply too strong, causing them to not have the slightest thought of resisting. You guys leave first. This person should be Huang Zhe's master of Destiny's bodyguard. It's useless for you guys to stay. Soon, Zhuowen's divine sense sounded in everyone's minds. Only then did they realize that Zhuowen had unknowingly dodged the terrifying attack and appeared on the other side. However, Zhuowen was too far away from them. Moreover, the Master of Destiny's aura had already locked onto Zhuowen. If Zhuowen also entered the space-time roulette, it would be harming everyone. Everyone on the space-time roulette also realized this. Moreover, Zhuowen had already given the order. They could only allow the space-time roulette to quickly break through the air and leave under Xiaohei's control. After the space-time roulette left, a stream of light quickly came from another direction in the starry sky and landed not far from Zhuowen. The man in front of him looked to be about 30 years old, but he had a head of white hair. He wore a loose robe, but it still could not hide his strong physique. Zoda, you're finally here. Now that I'm about to be killed by this bastard and my limbs are all crippled. This is all your fault. If my father finds out, I don't need to tell you what will happen to you, right? The moment Huang Zhe saw the white-haired man, he revealed a look of joy. However, he quickly scolded coldly. Zhuowen could clearly see that after seeing the white-haired man, Huang Zhe's originally trembling body calmed down a lot. Obviously, Huang Zhe was very confident in this white-haired man. Zhuowen sneered in his heart and mercilessly broke Huang Zhe's remaining left leg. Then, Huang Zhe screamed again and again in fear, not daring to speak again. The white-haired man named Zoda narrowed his eyes when he saw that Zhuowen still dared to touch Huang Zhe in front of him, and killing intent flashed. Chapter 2678. Ho, E divine, Erozhuowen slowly retreated with Huang Zhe in his hand. He had consumed a lot of energy when he used the profound meaning to create the Chi blade. Although he had used the Heavenly Way origin crystal to recover a lot of his primordial Chi and had taken some healing elixirs, he knew that if he were to use the Chi blade again, he would be seriously injured even if he had a 2-star Pengu sacred body. Moreover, he doubted that in his current state, could he really defeat the white-haired man in front of him with the Chi blade? From the white-haired man, he could feel that the Destiny Master's strength was far above that of Hunyuan Master. To put it bluntly, even if Old Bai and Old Wu worked together, the white-haired man would probably be able to kill them in one move. Let go of the crown prince and leave your head behind. Zoda only spat out this sentence, but it was filled with an unquestionable command. Zhuowen just stood there coldly. Facing Zoda's ferocious aura, he said indifferently, "What if I don't let go?" "Then die." After Zoda finished speaking, he took a step forward. His terrifying aura was extremely terrifying, as if the sky had collapsed. Soon after, Zoda suddenly punched out. The force in the air transformed into a powerful hurricane that actually enveloped Zhuo Wen's entire body. Zhuo Wen immediately displayed the power of the Pangu's sacred body to protect himself from the raging energy. However, he soon realized that Zoda's target was not him, but Huang Zhe in his hand. Huang Zhe was directly blasted into a bloody mist. Before he died, Huang Zhe died with his eyes wide open and stared at the indifferent Zoda. He only had time to say, "Zodi," before he completely lost his life. Zoda withdrew his fist and was still indifferent. He looked disdainfully at Huang Zhe, who had turned into a bloody mist, and said indifferently, "You are just a playboy. Do you want me to obey your orders? Now that there's a scapegoat here, I'll just kill you. When the time comes, I'll just capture this scapegoat and report back." Zhuo Wen hurriedly retreated. Looking at Huang Zhe, who had died in Zoda's hands, his pupils could not help but shrink. It had to be said that Zoda was really ruthless. He had actually killed his own master, Huang Zhe. However, he also knew that by killing Huang Zhe's words, it meant that Zhuo Wen would be the scapegoat. So, Zoda only translation, all Zoda was to kill Huang Zhe and house. It had to be said that Zoda was good. "Kill yourself in front of me, you." Zoda placed his hands behind his back and looked at Zhuo Wen with disdain. Zhuo Wen, translation, 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 translation. Zhuo Wen translation, nen, translation, 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 translations, translation, 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 translation. Zhuo Wen fell silent. The pressure that Zoda gave him was just too great. If he wanted to deal with such a powerful enemy, he would probably have to use a powerful trump card like the Hou-Yi Divine Arrow. When Zhuo Wen used Hou-Yi's Divine Arrow for the first time, he could not even activate it. The energy in his body was almost sucked dry. If it was not for the green-haired mummy, Zhuo Wen's life would have been in danger. Fortunately, Zhuo Wen had many Heavenly Way origin crystals and had already cultivated the 2-star Pango's sacred body. Zhuo Wen was confident that if he used Hou-Yi's Divine Arrow this time, he could at least shoot it out. Seeing that Zhuo Wen did not make a move, Zoda frowned slightly. Then he saw that the white-robed young man in front of him had unknowingly taken out an ordinary blood-stained horn. "It seems that you're going to resist?" Zoda's lips curled into a mocking smile. He did not care that Zhuo Wen had taken out the blood-stained horn. The blood-stained horn looked weak. It did not look like a powerful treasure at all. It would be strange if he cared about it. "Then you'll die." At this point, Zoda's lips curled into a cruel smile. Then he casually clapped his right hand. Suddenly, endless Taoist rhymes condensed into a huge stone platform like an earth-shattering hurricane. The stone platform was golden and had complicated patterns on it. It was a weapon that Zoda had casually condensed with the power of the Heavenly Way. Although it was just a casual attack, Zhuo Wen could feel that this attack was much stronger than that of Elder Bai and Elder Wu, who he had killed. After Zoda made this attack, he put his hands behind his back again. His eyes were arrogant, and he did not even look at Zhuo Wen. In his opinion, Zhuo Wen, an ant, would definitely die under his attack. With his status, why should he care about the life and death of an ant? Zhuo Wen stopped in midair and took a deep breath. Then he chanted a mysterious incantation. Then the originally ordinary blood-stained horn exploded with a monstrous evil spirit. The evil spirit was just too terrifying. It was almost tangible, forming mountains of corpses and seas of blood around the horn. It was like a scene straight out of hell. Zhuo Wen paled. 80% of the energy in his body had been absorbed in a single moment. Moreover, the Hou-Yi's Divine Arrow was constantly absorbing his energy. It was about to suck him dry. With this in mind, Zhuowen immediately connected to his miniature world. At the same time, he used the Devourer King's innate ability to devour. He began to madly devour the surging energy in the special grade Heavenly Way Origin crystal mine. In just a single moment, he reached a balance between the absorption and release of the energy. Zhuowen seemed to have become a transfer point for the energy. As the energy constantly flowed in, the evil spirit of the Ho Yi's divine arrow became even more terrifying. It seemed to stir up the sky, and a shocking killing intent locked onto Zoda. Zoda, who was originally unconcerned, felt his hair stand on end. He stared at Zhuowen in disbelief. To be more precise, he was staring at the blood-stained horn in Zhuowen's hand. The killing intent that erupted from the ordinary horn that he did not care about actually made him shiver all over. He felt the true threat of death. Ever since Zoda had become a Heaven's Mandate Lord, this was the first time he had felt such terrifying killing intent. It was enough to make him feel the threat of death. Moreover, the killing intent was becoming more and more terrifying, to the point where he was terrified. Zoda wanted to leave immediately, but the killing intent from the blood-stained horn had locked onto him. He knew that no matter where he fled, the horn would be released and would hit him. It was only a matter of time. Wait, Huang Zhe's death has nothing to do with you. I won't pursue the matter of you killing Huang Zhe. I'll leave right now. Put away this weapon, Zoda immediately said. Uft. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were cold, but his heart was filled with bitterness. He had no choice but to release the arrow now. Even if he wanted to stop it, he probably would not be able to. The Ho Yi's divine arrow was just too terrifying. If he did not release the arrow and it was stained with blood, he would probably be the one to die. Only now did Zhuowen realize just how tyrannical the Ho Yi's divine arrow was. It was fine if he did not release it, but once it was released, it would definitely be stained with blood. Chapter 2679. A Bloody Arrow. What do you want me to do? Sensing the increasingly terrifying killing intent, Zoda finally let go of his pride and tried to negotiate with Zhuowen. His voice even sounded like he was begging for mercy. I want you to die. After saying that, Zhuowen bit the tip of his tongue, spat out a mouthful of blood essence, and sprinkled it on the divine arrow. Whoosh! The divine arrow suddenly shot out, and the powerful recoil directly sent Zhuowen flying thousands of miles away. The divine sword had already turned into a shadow and swept toward Zoda. Zoda roared. A strong sense of crisis made him burst out with all the strength in his body. He also took out all the divine weapons he could use and used them to block in front of him. Bang, bang, bang. Unfortunately, the divine arrow was too terrifying. The divine weapons Zoda took out were like paper in front of the divine arrow. They couldn't even last a breath. Breaking through the obstruction of the divine weapons, the divine arrow made a muffled sound and penetrated Zoda's chest. Zoda even burned his blood essence and tried his best to resist, but he found that it was all in vain. The divine arrow instantly pierced through his chest. Then, Zoda only felt his vision go black. His whole body exploded into pieces, and he couldn't be more dead. There was a human-shaped pit in the broken meteorite. Zhuowen climbed out with difficulty. When he saw the scene of Zoda being killed in an instant, he was completely stunned. This Ho-E divine arrow was too terrifying. It actually killed a Destiny Master expert in an instant. But soon, Zhuowen noticed the changes in his body. Zhuowen saw that there were 2 flame stars between his eyebrows. The second star was originally very dim, but now it had become extremely bright. Zhuowen knew that he had unintentionally broken through the moment he shot the divine arrow. Of course, when he found that 30% of the special class Heavenly Law Origin crystal vein in the small world had been consumed, his joy of making a breakthrough vanished. Just shooting an arrow had consumed 30% of the special class Heavenly Law Origin crystal vein. How terrifying was that? Zhuowen knew that he must have absorbed the extra energy to advance to the peak 2-star Pangu, sacred body. This Ho Yi's divine arrow is simply too terrifying. Just a single arrow like this actually absorbed 30% of the special grade Heavenly Tao Origin crystal mine. Zhuowen muttered to himself in shock. He knew very well that if he did not possess a special grade Heavenly Tao Origin crystal mine, not only would he not be able to launch the Ho Yi divine arrow, but he would also be sucked dry by the Ho Yi divine arrow. Zhuowen crawled to his feet with great difficulty and consumed a healing elixir. He barely managed to retrieve the Ho Yi divine arrow that had landed not too far away from him. Then he rushed toward the mark he had left in the space-time roulette. The disturbance caused by Ho Yi's arrow earlier was just too great, so he didn't dare to stay here for long. Otherwise, he would draw the attention of nearby experts. The current 8 heavenly domains were no longer the same as before. With the continuous influx of cultivators from the Xianmi heavenly domain, it was easy to encounter Tao-confirming experts. Not long after Zhuowen left, a stream of light swept over from the distant starry sky and landed on the ruins of the One Shui Palace. It was a bald man in a loose robe. Upon closer inspection, it was Master Yuan Hui, who had sealed the passage to the eldritch heavenly domain. At this moment, Master Yuan Hui's eyes were extremely solemn, and his expression was quite unsightly. He looked around, waved his sleeve, and immediately released several array flags. Then he formed a seal with both hands, as if sensing something. After a while, Master Yuan Hui put away the array flags and sighed softly. I didn't sense the Crown Prince's life aura. It seems that the Crown Prince has been killed. And Zoda! At this point, Master Yuan Hui's eyes were filled with fear. Just now, he had used the array flags to deduce that not only had Huang Zhe's life aura disappeared, but even Zoda, Old Bai, and Old Wu had also lost their life aura. Obviously, the 3 of them were also dead. Putting Old Bai and Old Wu aside, Zoda was the master of heaven. Even in the Huang Ji family, he was considered a powerhouse and a mainstay of the upper echelons. Such a powerhouse was almost invincible in the 8 heavenly domains. Who else could have killed Zoda? Could it be another Tao Mansion-level force? Master Yuan Hui muttered to himself and continued to deduce with the array flags. Soon he caught a few more unfamiliar auras. In particular, there was a terrifying murderous aura that even made him pale. He knew that Zoda and the others were most likely killed by the owner of the murderous aura. However, when he wanted to follow the murderous aura to find the owner of the murderous aura, he frowned because he found that the owner of the murderous aura was actually a cultivator at the extreme realm of life and death. I must have made a mistake in my deduction. Master Yuan Hui shook his head. He didn't care about the aura of the cultivator at the extreme realm of life and death. Zoda was the master of heaven, a true powerhouse. Even if there were millions of cultivators at the extreme realm of life and death, they wouldn't be able to kill Zoda. It was no wonder that Master Yuan Hui denied his deduction. There are 2 other auras that are familiar. This is the cultivation technique of the Purple Red House. I heard that the Purple Red House sent Fire Plume and Steel Plume this time. These 2 are also here. It seems like I have to ask them about the situation. Master Yuan Hui narrowed his eyes. Although he wasn't responsible for Huang Zhe's death, he was still in the 8 heavenly domains. Now that Huang Zhe was dead, he had to give the Huang Ji family an explanation. He couldn't just pretend that he didn't know anything and go back. With his status, the Huang Ji family wouldn't blame him too much. However, it was inevitable that the Huang Ji family would hold a grudge against him. Master Yuan Hui naturally wouldn't do that. Let's find Fire Plume and Steel Plume first. Master Yuan Hui waved his sleeve and collected the auras of Fire Plume and Steel Plume. Then he sat cross-legged on a meteorite not far away and began to refine them. He planned to refine the auras of the 2 and then arrange a tracking array. With the auras as a guide, he would be able to track the exact location of Fire Plume and Steel Plume. Of course, this required a very complicated technique and an extremely high level of array Tao. Master Yuan, we would need a long time to refine them completely. However, once he finished refining them, Fire Plume and Steel Plume wouldn't be able to escape. In the starry sky, the space-time roulette continued to fly and finally came to a stop on a remote meteorite. Will brothers be all right? Zhou De is said to be the strongest guard by Huang Zhe's side. He's a heavens will expert, Tong Qimei said with a sobbing tone. Mu Qinxue fell silent. Her beautiful eyes were filled with worry. Although she was very confident in Zhuowen, his opponent was a heavens will expert after all. He was a second step Dao confirming expert and was much stronger than Old Bai and Old Wu. Fire Plume and Steel Plume looked at each other and saw the helplessness and pity in each other's eyes. They admitted that Zhuowen was very strong, but the heavens will expert had already surpassed the first step Dao confirming. No matter how strong Zhuowen was, how could he be a match for Zhou De? Chapter 2680. Preparing for pill refinement, the atmosphere on the space-time roulette was bleak and silent. Soon, a streak of light broke everyone's silence. Everyone looked at the stream of light warily, but when they saw the true face of the figure in the stream of light, they were all pleasantly surprised. Husband, big brother Zhuo, brother Zhuo. Everyone couldn't help but call out. Mu Qinxue flew out and threw herself at Zhuowen. Zhuowen felt his body become heavy, and a strong sense of exhaustion overwhelmed him. His vision turned black, and he fell into Mu Qinxue's embrace. Qinxue, take me to the far west and find the Ryuka camp. After Zhuowen said this, he fell into Mu Qinxue's embrace and lost consciousness. Mu Qinxue's expression changed. She hugged Zhuowen's body and found that Zhuowen had completely lost consciousness. Her eyes were filled with worry. At this moment, Xiaohei had already controlled the space-time roulette to catch Mu Qinxue and Zhuowen. Big sister Qinxue, is big brother Zhuo all right? Tong Qimei asked in a worried voice. Mu Qinxue shook her head and said he's fine. He's just exhausted too much of his energy and mind, so he fainted. Fire Plume and Steel Plume walked forward. Fire Plume said with mixed emotions, Brother Zhuo is the most abnormal genius I've ever seen. He clearly hasn't proven his Dao yet, but he was able to kill Lord Primordial Chaos and escape from the hands of the Master of Destiny. Even the peerless geniuses of Dao Palace forces can't do what Brother Zhuo has done. Steel Plume nodded in agreement. Mu Qinxue's eyes lit up when she heard this. She was proud to have a husband like Zhuowen. Whether it was Fire Plume, Steel Plume, or Mu Qinxue, none of them believed that Zhuowen had the strength to kill Zhuo De. They all thought that Zhuowen had narrowly escaped from Zhuo De's hands. Even so, they still felt that Zhuowen was extremely amazing. After all, in their eyes, Zhuowen was only a life and death cultivator. Just think about it, which life and death cultivator in this world could escape from a peerless powerhouse like the Master of Destiny? We shouldn't stay here for too long. Let's leave this place and head to the far west, Mu Qinxue said. The others nodded slightly. They had also heard Zhuo Wen's words before he fainted. They knew that the long clan members that Zhuo Wen cared about were all in the far west. Zhuo Wen slowly opened his eyes and shook his head before sitting up. He looked around in a daze. The first thing he saw was Mu Qinxue, who had a happy look on her face, followed by Tong Qimei, Fire Plume, Steel Plume, and Xiaohei. Husband, you're finally awake. Mu Qinxue quickly helped Zhuo Wen up. Zhuo Wen rubbed his forehead and said to Mu Qinxue, Qinxue, how long have I been unconscious? Mu Qinxue said, You've been unconscious for 3 days. Right now, we're rushing to the far west. We should be able to reach the far west in another day. That's right, husband. Since the Ryuka clan is in the far west, why didn't you tell us before? Zhuo Wen said with a bitter smile, When I was running for my life, I was inexplicably sent to the 6 Desires heavenly domain from a blood-stained cliff. After I came back, many things happened, so I forgot to tell you about the Ryuka clan. The 8 heavens are about to change. I have to take the Ryuka clan away. Mu Chinshua nodded. She had heard about the reason for the 8 heavens change from the fire plume and steel plume from Zhuowen. The 8 heavens were indeed not a place to stay for long. Zhuowen chatted with everyone for a while before looking at Tong Chimei. Seeing Zhuowen's gaze, Tong Chimei unconsciously lowered her head and her eyes flickered. Chimei, I've implicated you in this matter. Don't worry, I'll take care of your cultivation and appearance, Zhuowen said in a gentle voice. Tong Chimei nodded and did not say anything. Her cultivation foundation had been completely destroyed by Huang Zhe, so it would be difficult for her to recover. Moreover, her appearance had been damaged by Huang Zhe's Dao Rime, which was a permanent injury, not to mention losing her cultivation. Even if her cultivation was at its peak, it would be difficult for her to recover her appearance. Qin Shui, I'm going into seclusion for a while. I plan to refine pills to restore Chimei. This is the Ryuka clan's residence. When the time comes, help me arrange the Ryuka clan's residence. When I come out of seclusion, I'll take the Ryuka clan away. After Zhuowen gave the jade slip with the location of the Ryuka clan's residence to Mu Chinshua, he entered the space-time roulette and went into seclusion. The space-time roulette was made up of space-time laws. Although it didn't look big, there was boundless space inside, enough to accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. Therefore, Zhuowen didn't have to worry about not having enough space when he went into seclusion. Zhuowen sat cross-legged and with a wave of his sleeve, he took out the Emperor Pill Furnace. The Emperor Pill Furnace's grade was very high. Zhuowen felt that even in the Xianmi heavenly domain, this Emperor Pill Furnace was a first-class pill furnace. Moreover, the success rate of refining pills was terrifyingly high. Moreover, Zhuowen had obtained the mysterious alchemy book from the Pill Pagoda, which contained a powerful alchemy art. With that alchemy art, Zhuowen's success rate in refining Tao-confirming divine pills was much higher than ordinary alchemists. This time, Zhuowen decided to refine 2 types of pills, the facial restoration pill and the nirvana pill. These 2 pills were both heavenly Tao divine pills, and Zhuowen had obtained many pill recipes from Huiyu in the alchemy book. These 2 pill recipes were from the alchemy book. The facial restoration pill was naturally a pill that could restore one's appearance. Moreover, it was specifically used to deal with disfigurement caused by Tao runes. It had a miraculous effect. The nirvana pill, on the other hand, was meant for cultivators whose foundations had been destroyed. It could repair their foundations and restore their cultivation. Of course, since the nirvana pill was only a heavenly Tao divine pill, it could only repair the foundations of cultivators below the heavenly Tao master. Zhuowen was only a Tier 9 alchemist. This time, Zhuowen refined these 2 types of pills not only to restore Tong Chimei's health, but also to break through the shackles of Tier 9 in one fell swoop and reach the level of a Heaven Tao alchemist. Of course, if he wanted to improve his alchemy skills, he would naturally need a large number of divine medicines to practice. The main ingredients of the facial restoration pill and the nirvana pill were Heaven Tao divine medicines. Zhuowen had a lot of divine medicines on him. He had obtained many Tao-confirming divine medicines in the origin ground and many precious divine medicines in Huang Zhe's small world. His only regret was that he couldn't get Zouda's spirit ring. Ho Yi's divine arrow was too overbearing. When it was shot, it directly pierced through Zouda, causing Zouda's body to be destroyed. Even his belongings were destroyed. Chapter 2681. Young Master Wu Chengzhuan had prepared nearly 100 sets of herbs for the face-restoring pill and nirvana pill. He first started refining the face-restoring pill. Because the face-restoring pill was relatively simple, he naturally planned to go from simple to complicated. This way, the success rate would be higher. Igniting the flame and opening the Pill Emperor furnace, the Pill Emperor, tortoise hidden in the furnace, hurriedly came out and fanned the flames for Zhuowen. Ever since Zhuowen had promised the Pill Emperor turtle that he would give him a divine pill for every successful cauldron of pills, The Pill Emperor Turtle had been extremely attentive after Zhuowen had refined pills. The Pill Emperor Tortoise was the Pill Emperor Furnace's artifact spirit. Its understanding of the Pill Emperor Furnace was far above Zhuowen's. With the Pill Emperor Tortoise's cooperation, Zhuowen was able to refine pills smoothly without much effort. As the Pill Emperor Tortoise continued to devour the pills, its strength was clearly growing stronger. After tasting such benefits, the Pill Emperor Tortoise was even more enthusiastic than Zhuowen every time Zhuowen refined pills. This made Zhuowen laugh in his heart. This time, Zhuowen planned to refine Heavenly Tao grade divine pills. This fellow was even more enthusiastic and a little nervous. In the past, the Pill Emperor Tortoise had only obtained Tier 8 and Tier 9 divine pills from Zhuowen. It had never tasted a Heavenly Tao grade divine pill. Whether Zhuowen succeeded or failed this time was closely related to it. It would be strange if this fellow wasn't nervous. Zhuowen first purified a set of herbs for the face-restoring pill. After feeling that it was about right, he placed the purified herbs into the Pill Emperor furnace. The Pill Emperor Tortoise immediately controlled the flame, while Zhuowen formed a pill seal at the side. The pill refining process proceeded in an orderly manner. Gradually, a rich medicinal fragrance wafted out from the pill furnace. This medicinal fragrance contained an inexplicable Tao rhythm. About 2 hours later, a dull explosion came from the Pill Emperor furnace. Then, a burnt smell came from the medicinal fragrance. Zhuowen revealed a helpless look. He knew that his first attempt to refine the face-restoring pill had failed. However, Zhuowen wasn't discouraged. Instead, he prepared a new set of herbs and continued to purify them. Then, he placed them into the Pill Emperor furnace. Minutes and seconds passed. After Zhuowen refined the 9th set of herbs, he stopped and began to ponder silently. His mind kept replaying the steps and every technique he used to concoct the medicine. He wanted to find the real reason for his failure. The Pill Emperor Tortoise with a heartache. In the end, it didn't stop muttering about Zhuowen's prodigal actions. After pondering for an entire day and night, Zhuowen finally opened his eyes once more. Then he once again picked up the 10th set of medicinal ingredients and began the purification work. This time, pill refining pill, pill emperor, Pill Emperor furnace, to the immortal refining pill, was Pill Emperor pill, to master Zhuowen of heavens, Tao of heavens, heaven's God furnace. Seeing this, the Pill Emperor Tortoise revealed a joyful expression. It felt that the pill refining this time was different from the previous 9 times. Suddenly, the Pill Emperor furnace buzzed. The medicinal fragrance became extremely dense and turned into surging clouds. Then, the top of the Pill Emperor furnace was lifted and 12 pills flew out. Zhuowen took out a jade bottle and placed all 12 pills inside. Zhuowen was pleasantly surprised. This time, all 12 face-restoring pills were successful. He knew that this was all thanks to the mysterious alchemy book's alchemy technique. This alchemy technique was originally to increase the success rate. Since he had found the method to refine Heavenly Tao divine pills, the success rate naturally wouldn't be low. After handing one of the face-restoring pills to the Pill Emperor Tortoise, Zhuowen sat cross-legged on the ground. He silently felt the process of refining the pill. His eyes revealed a trace of enlightenment. He could clearly feel that his spirit seemed to have improved a lot at this moment. He knew that the moment he successfully refined the pill, he was already a genuine Heavenly Tao alchemist. Next, I can refine the Nirvana pill. Zhuowen's eyes revealed excitement. He knew that once he successfully refined Heavenly Tao divine pills, the Nirvana pill wouldn't be too difficult for him. Sure enough, with the help of the alchemy technique and the Pill Emperor Tortoise, Zhuowen only used one try to refine the Nirvana pill. Moreover, all 12 pills were successful. Zhuowen knew that the moment he became a heavenly Tao alchemist, there was basically no chance of failure in refining heavenly Tao divine pills in his hands. If the alchemists of the Xianmi heavenly domain knew about Zhuowen's situation, they would definitely be dumbfounded. It was really too unbelievable. One had to know that even if a heavenly Tao alchemist refined heavenly Tao divine pills, maintaining a success rate of about 50% was already very heaven-defying. Moreover, even if a second-step alchemist refined heavenly Tao divine pills, it was very difficult to have a 100% success rate. At most, it was 80 to 90%. However, Zhuowen had just become a heavenly Tao alchemist, and he could refine heavenly Tao divine pills with a 100% success rate. It could be said that Zhuowen was absolutely heaven-defying. After putting away the nirvana pills, Zhuowen prepared to come out of seclusion. Soon he noticed that his communication jade talisman was ringing. He opened the jade talisman and found that it was a message from Mu Qinxue. After reading the message, Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly opened the restrictions around him and stepped out, arriving on the space-time roulette's deck. At this moment, the deck was ablaze with flames. An incomparably huge phoenix phantom spread its wings and flew high, enveloping the space-time roulette surroundings. On the deck, Fire Plume and Steel Plume were both injured. They sat on the side, paralyzed. Tong Chimei was taking care of the two of them, while Xiao He was controlling the space-time roulette. Only now did Zhuowen realize that outside the phoenix phantom, there were actually rays of light descending. It looked like countless meteors were falling, dazzling and dangerous. At the top of these rays of light was an extremely luxurious flying ship. The exterior of this flying ship was built to look like an incomparably huge palace. It was grand and majestic, and it was extremely luxurious. At this moment, there were 3 figures standing at the top of the palace. The person in the lead was extremely young. He looked to be about 15 or 16 years old. He wore luxurious feather clothes, held a feather fan in his hand, and wore a feather crown on his head. His skin was whiter than snow. Standing on either side of the youth were a man and a woman. The man was dressed in black, and his skin was extremely dark. If it were night, it would be difficult to distinguish him from the darkness. The woman was the opposite of the man. She was dressed in white, and her face was frighteningly pale. She looked like a female ghost instead of a normal person. The rays of light were the attacks launched by the feather-clothed youth. The feather-clothed youth's aura was not very strong. He was probably at the level of Heavenly Lawmaster. However, the feather fan in his hand was not ordinary. With a casual wave of his hand, he unleashed an attack that even Dao Yuan Master would have to deal with. Obviously, he was not an ordinary person. Child Wuchang, don't you think you have crossed the line? The Purple-Red House has no enmity with you. Why are you attacking us? After taking the healing medicine, Fire Plume looked up at the feather-clothed youth. Her beautiful eyes were filled with resentment. Chapter 2682. Merciless Crush. The youth named young Lord Wu Chong shot a disdainful glance at Fire Plume and said, "Fire Plume, what qualifications do you have to talk to me? Although your Purple-Red House is a Dao Gate level force, it's only trash ranked at the bottom of the Dao Gate level forces. It's not impossible for our Impermanence Palace to destroy your Purple-Red House. Moreover, it's rare to encounter a woman with the Phoenix bloodline in the 8 heavens. So I, young Lord Wu Chong, want this woman. Yet you obstruct me in every way possible. Just because of this, I won't be wrong to kill you." Speaking up to here, young Lord Wu Chong waved his feather fan again, and the power of the falling light increased sharply. The phoenix phantom that was already on the verge of collapse let out a mournful cry and collapsed with a loud bang. Mu Qinxue grunted, but she was not afraid in the face of danger. After taking a few steps back, she continued to use the power of fire to neutralize the aftershock and landed calmly on the deck. Young Lord Wu Chong obviously did not intend to be heavy-handed. After Mu Chinchue's phoenix phantom was destroyed, he withdrew his hand and said indifferently, "I say, little beauty, I've taken a fancy to your phoenix bloodline. With your cultivation, you're still far from being able to fight me. Come with me obediently, and you'll be spared from physical pain." Mu Chinchua ignored young Lord Wu Chang's invitation and came to Zhuowen's side in pleasant surprise, whispering softly, "Husband, you've come out of seclusion." Zhuowen nodded and immediately looked coldly at young Lord Wu Chang in front of him and asked, "Who is this clown?" "Brother Zhuo, this young Lord Wu Chang is the young palace master of Impermanence Palace. Impermanence Palace is also a Dao Gate level force in the eastern Dao territory of the Xianmi Heavens domain. It's just that its ranking is slightly higher," Fire Plume explained. Young Lord Wu Chang saw that Mu Chinchua was acting so intimately with a man who had just appeared and was only in the twin extremities of life and death. Moreover, this man had openly challenged him and called him a clown. This infuriated young Master Wu Chang, causing him to hold back his anger. Because of his cultivation method, he needed a fire attribute physique, so he immediately sensed that the phoenix bloodline in Mu Chinchua's body was different, so he made a move. In the end, he was pleasantly surprised to find that Mu Chinchua actually had the phoenix bloodline. The woman he had taken a fancy to was now calling another man her husband, and she was even acting affectionately. Moreover, this man was an ant in the extreme realm of life and death. How could young Master Wu Chang tolerate this? He couldn't wait to kill this despicable man. "Who do you think you are? You are merely at the two extremes of life and death. Yet you still dare to put on an act in front of me. If you are still a man, then come out and spar with me. I want to see if you have the strength to keep the woman I fancy," young Master Wu Chang said coldly. Young Master Wu Chang was sure that the white-robed young man in front of him would definitely not dare to accept the challenge. Once the white-robed young man did not dare to accept the challenge, he would have even more reason to attack. At that time, he would make the white-robed young man suffer a fate worse than death. "You want to spar with me?" Zhuowen had a strange look in his eyes. Not only Zhuowen, but Mu Chinchua, Fire Plume, and Steel Plume also had strange looks on their faces. Although Zhuowen's aura was only at the extreme realm of life and death, they knew that Zhuowen's true strength was extremely terrifying. Even Lord Hunyuan had died in the hands of Zhuowen, which showed just how powerful Zhuowen was. Young Master Wu Chang's cultivation was only at the heavenly Dao Master realm. Although he relied on the feather fan in his hand to display extraordinary combat strength, he only had the strength of a Dao origin master at most. Would he not be looking for trouble if he encountered Zhuowen? Young Master Wu Chang raised his chin slightly and said proudly, "What? You don't dare to?" "Why wouldn't I dare?" Zhuowen smiled slightly and swept out of the space-time roulette, standing above young Master Wu Chang and looking down at him. Young Master Wu Chang frowned slightly. He was very unhappy that Zhuowen was looking down on him with such an attitude. He sneered, took a step forward, and landed in front of Zhuowen, saying, "You've got guts, but unfortunately you're going to die soon." The man and woman standing next to young Master Wu Chang frowned slightly, but they did not move. Young Master Wu Chang had just sent a voice transmission telling them not to follow him and that he would be the one to deal with this battle. Although the two of them felt a little uneasy, they didn't care too much when they thought that young Master Wu Chang was only facing an ant at the extreme realm of life and death. With the feather fan in hand, young Master Wu Chang took a step forward and waved the feather fan in his hand. Instantly, countless rays of light shot out from all directions like meteors and enveloped Zhuowen. "You're just an ant, overestimating yourself. You're making me laugh my head off." Young Master Wu Chang gently waved the feather fan and sneered gracefully when he saw the countless rays of light drowning Zhuowen. However, after young Master Wu Chang said this, he immediately felt that something was wrong, because after the rays of light disappeared, he found that the place where Zhuowen was originally standing was empty, as if he had disappeared into thin air. He should have been completely annihilated by my attack. Young Master, Wu Chang muttered. He did not doubt this. After all, Zhuowen was only at the extreme realm of life and death. In his eyes, Zhuowen was just an ant. Young Master, be careful. When young Master Wu Chang was about to turn around and return to the spaceship, the man and woman on the spaceship suddenly shouted. Before young Master Wu Chang could even react, he felt a terrifying gust of wind sweeping toward him, heading straight for his face. Asterisk bang. Asterisk young Master Wu Chang only felt a heavy blow to his cheek, and then his whole body was involuntarily sent flying. His cheeks were red, and he spat out blood. When young Master Wu Chang wanted to see who had attacked him, he found that the person who attacked him had already closed in on him the moment he threw a punch. Only then did he see that the person who had closed in on him was actually the extreme realm of life and death in white that he disdained. At this moment, the white-clothed young man's face was indifferent as his fists rained down on young Master Wu Chang's body. Every punch that landed on young Master Wu Chang's body seemed to be able to break him apart. Young Master Wu Chang roared and tried to get up to resist, only to find that the young man in white in front of him was too fierce. He couldn't get up at all and could only passively endure the barrage of punches coming his way. Young Master Wu Chang was shocked. Is this really the power of the extreme realm of life and death? How could it be so terrifying? Bang! Zhuowen clenched his fist and punched young Master Wu Chang's chest. The wind from the punch whistled, like countless thunderbolts spreading out and exploding. Pucci! Young Master Wu Chang spat out a mouthful of blood and fell straight down like a withered leaf. Zhuowen jumped down and unceremoniously stepped on young Master Wu Chang's head, making him unable to move at all. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He took the feather fan and the spirit ring from young Master Wu Chang's hand and unceremoniously took them. Ah! Young Master Wu Chang's lungs were about to explode. He kept struggling, but it was futile. Zhuowen's strength was too terrifying. It was like 1,000 pounds pressing down on his head, firmly suppressing him. Young Master. Chapter 2683. Tyrannical Art of Slaying Zhua, when's right hand moved like lightning. The power of the 2-star Pinnacle Pangu's sacred body burst out and quickly blasted Child Wu Chang's limbs, shattering them. Zhuowen then grabbed Child Wu Chang by the neck and lifted him into the air. The man and woman in black and white looked at Zhuowen with ghastly expressions. They were also shocked. The young man in front of them was only at the extreme realm of life and death. How could he be so powerful? Do you know who Child Wu Chang is? How dare you act so recklessly? The man in black looked at him coldly and did not hide the killing intent in his eyes. You're just the young palace master of Wu Chang Palace. Is Wu Chang Palace that great? Is it a Tao Palace force? Zhuowen said calmly while holding Child Wu Chang. The man in black was stunned. He suppressed his anger and said, although Wu Chang Palace is not a Tao Palace force, it is still one of the top Tao sects. You're courting death. If you don't want to die, you'd better let go of Child Wu Chang. Child Wu Chang calmed down and said coldly, both black and white impermanents are experts of Master Han Yuan. If you kill me on impulse, you'll face the wrath of black and white impermanents. You'll definitely die. How about this? You let me go, and I'll make a blood oath not to touch you. I'll let you go safely. This is the best way to get the best of both worlds. Zhuowen sneered as he looked at the seemingly calm young Master Wu Chang. He knew that young Master Wu Chang's words were a little threatening. Did he think that Zhuowen would be afraid of the black and white impermanents in front of him? The black and white impermanents were indeed Master Han Yuan, but their auras were not as strong as Old White and Old Wu. Old White and Old Wu were both at the peak of Master Han Yuan, while the black and white impermanents were only at the early stage of Master Han Yuan. Zhuowen could even kill Old White and Old Wu, who were both at the peak of Master Han Yuan, let alone the black and white impermanents. Child Wuchang was confident that the young man in white would agree to his proposal. In his opinion, the young man in white was indeed powerful. But how could he be stronger than Master Hunyuan? Let you go? I really can't do it. Since you've set your sights on my wife, this matter is naturally not that simple, Zhuowen said casually. Young Master Wuchang was dumbfounded and said in disbelief, Are you not afraid of Hunyuan, Master? You must be crazy. Unfortunately, as soon as Child Wuchang finished speaking, Zhuowen violently flung him away, smashing him directly at the feet of Mu Chinchua on the space-time roulette deck. The pitiful prince, Wuchang's limbs had been crippled by Zhuowen, and his energy had been sealed. He was now like a mortal, unable to resist at all. He fell to the ground, grimacing in pain. Black and white impermanence, kill him. Young impermanence had also given up, and Zhuowen clearly did not intend to let him go. So, the moment young impermanence was thrown out, he immediately shouted at the black and white impermanence. Black and white impermanence's eyes were filled with murderous intent. This person really didn't know what was good for him. It was obvious that young Master Impermanence was about to bow his head, but this person still refused to give up. If they didn't kill this person, they would never be able to calm down. Whoosh! Whoosh! The black and white impermanence turned into two streams of light, one black and one white. They held black and white swords and aimed at Zhuowen's vital points, wanting to completely kill Zhuowen. It had to be said that the black and white impermanence's cooperation was extremely tacit. The two of them had obviously blocked all of Zhuowen's escape routes. No matter where Zhuowen wanted to retreat, he would have to face their attacks. Zhuowen stood in place with a sneer on the corner of his mouth. He had no intention of retreating at all. Two early-stage master Hunyuan cultivators were not qualified to force him to retreat. Seeing that Zhuowen did not evade, the black and white impermanence revealed a ferocious smile. The moment they approached Zhuowen, the two of them unceremoniously slashed out with their divine swords. The black and white swords broke through the starry sky and intersected like a pair of scissors. Zhuowen's whole body was enveloped by the powerful scissor-like swords, completely drowning in the black and white. You've overestimated yourself. You deserve to die now. Looking at the figure drowned in the black and white swords, the black and white impermanence could not help but sneer. Slaughtering Dao Palm! An indifferent voice was heard. Immediately, the two black and white swords suddenly collapsed. A huge palm appeared out of thin air and blasted toward the black and white impermanence. Two muffled groans were heard. Immediately, the black and white impermanents were seen retreating. They looked in horror at the young man in white, who was unscathed and had used the slaughtering Dao Palm. The slaughtering Dao Palm was the second move of the slaughtering Dao art. It was so powerful that it could kill a Daoyuan master. Moreover, Zhuowen used the slaughtering Dao Palm with the two-star Pangu's sacred body, so its power was even more terrifying and powerful. This guy has learned the slaughtering Dao art. The black and white impermanents who had been repelled looked at Zhuowen, who had used the slaughtering Dao Palm, with astonishment in their eyes. The slaughtering Dao art was very famous in the Xian, Mi heavenly domain. It was not only because the slaughtering Dao art was very powerful, but also because the slaughtering Dao art had great limitations. It could only be cultivated to the Daoyuan master level. Most Dao-proving experts in the Xian, Mi heavenly domain rarely cultivated Dao arts like the slaughtering Dao art. However, the black and white impermanents were puzzled. Zhuowen was only in the two extremities of life and death. How could his slaughtering Dao Palm be so powerful? Zhuowen shook his sleeves and blasted out two more palms. The terrifying power of the heavenly way was like an angry dragon. It condensed into two huge palms and roared toward the black and white impermanence. The black and white impermanence's eyes turned gloomy when they saw the two palms. They found that the two palms that Zhuowen had blasted out were extremely powerful. Even their arms were trembling, and it was difficult for them to resist. The two of them couldn't help but rejoice that Zhuowen hadn't learned the third move of the slaughtering Dao art. The slaughtering Dao palm was already so terrifying. They really couldn't imagine how powerful it would be if he used the slaughtering Dao palm. Just as the two of them were rejoicing, Zhuowen in front of them formed a seal again. Then the surrounding heavenly way laws began to become chaotic and turned into a storm. Then two huge arms suddenly stretched out from behind Zhuowen. The two arms were formed purely by the power of the heavenly way. They were invisible, but could be sensed. Puchi! When the two slaughtering Dao palms broke through the air and landed in front of the black and white impermanence, the black and white impermanence's hearts skipped a beat. They burned their blood essence and sped up to the extreme. They actually planned to escape. Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. He formed a seal with both hands and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. He used the Panga Banner's forbidden profound, Hong Meng Wuji. Suddenly, the space around the black and white impermanence completely froze. Even the heavenly way laws were sealed. The two of them stopped in their tracks. Therefore, this pause was only for a moment, but it was enough to be fatal. Chapter 2684. Dragon Domain Zhuowen's face was pale, and he almost couldn't stand straight. He immediately took a healing pill, and his figure was no longer in a sorry state. Just now he had only used the profound meaning of forbidden to stop the black and white impermanence for a breath of time, but it had consumed 50% of his energy. It had to be said that the profound meaning had consumed too much of his energy. He couldn't imagine if he could withstand the terrifying consumption of the profound meaning if he wanted to stop the black and white impermanence for a longer period of time. How is this possible? Young Master Wu Chang stared blankly at the black and white impermanence being turned into nothingness by the Tao's slaughtering hand. His eyes filled with disbelief. Zhuowen slowly landed on the space-time roulette's deck and indifferently looked at young Master Wu Chang. Then he said to Mu Qinxue, "Qinxue, how do you plan to deal with this person?" Young Master Wu Chang trembled. He didn't dare look at Zhuowen's cold eyes and instead looked at Mu Qinxue with anticipation, hoping to win Mu Qinxue's sympathy. Unfortunately, Mu Qinxue's eyes were filled with coldness. She was very clear that young Master Wu Chang in front of her didn't have good intentions when he wanted to take her away. If Zhuowen wasn't strong enough, not only would Zhuowen be killed, her end wouldn't be any better. Sometimes, being kind to the enemy was being cruel to yourself. Mu Qinxue waved her hand, and a flame poured out, wrapping around young Master Wu Chang. With a miserable scream, young Master Wu Chang was burned to ashes. Brother Zhua, if you go to the Xianmi heavenly domain, you have to be careful of the Huangji family and Wu Chang Palace. You killed people from these two forces, so they definitely won't let this matter rest. Fire Plume said in a worried voice. Zhuowen nodded and said, "Many thanks for Miss Fire Plume's reminder. I won't implicate the two of you in this matter." Fire Plume angrily stomped her foot and said, "That's not what I meant. Don't misunderstand, all right? I know, but I was the one who caused this. It has nothing to do with you." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he continued, "Have you found the Long family's encampment?" Mu Qinxue replied, "Found it. It's about an hour's journey from here, but we were stopped halfway by that young Master Wu Chang." "All right, let's go to the Ryuka camp first." "Oh, right. Chimei, these 2 bottles of medicinal pills are for you." As Zhuowen spoke, he took out the jade bottles containing the rebirth pills and rejuvenation pills and passed them over to Tong Chimei, who stood at the side. "Big brother Zhua, what's this?" Tong Chimei asked curiously. "These 2 jade bottles contain the facial restoration pill and the nirvana pill. The facial restoration pill can help you recover your looks, while the nirvana pill can help you recover your foundation and cultivation," Zhuowen said. Tong Chimei was pleasantly surprised. She had never doubted Zhuowen's words. "You refined these facial restoration pills and nirvana pills?" Fire Plume asked suspiciously. If Fire Plume wasn't wrong, the facial restoration pills and Nirvana pills were both heavenly Tao divine pills. Zhuowen wasn't a heavenly Tao alchemist in the past, so he shouldn't have been able to refine these two divine pills. Could it be that this guy had broken through? I refined them. I went into seclusion to refine these two divine pills, and I successfully refined them, so I advanced to the heavenly Tao alchemist level. Zhuowen saw through Fire Plume's thoughts, and he spoke without hiding anything. Fire Plume was a little numb. She felt that this white-clothed young man was a little too freakish. His strength was already terrifying enough, but he had actually broken through to the heavenly Tao alchemy level in both the Tao of formations and the Tao of pills. Zhuowen, are you really at the extreme realm of life and death? Fire Plume asked subconsciously. Zhuowen was stunned, and then he smiled. Yes. Then, do you know the grade of your ancestral Tao root? Fire Plume was unwilling to give up. She felt that since Zhuowen's cultivation was already so heaven-defying at the extreme realm of life and death, then the ancestral Tao root within his body was definitely extraordinary, and it was very likely to be a top-rate ancestral Tao root. I haven't tested my ancestral Tao root. Zhuowen shook his head. Let's talk about the ancestral Tao root in the future. As for junior sister Qimei, I intend to hand her over to you. She possesses an Earth-grade ancestral Tao root, and I presume your Violet Red House would be more than happy to have such a genius, right? Zhuowen continued. After experiencing the string of events, Zhuowen didn't intend to allow the people by his side to continue staying in Xianmi region. Even though Tang Qimei's ancestral Tao root was sufficient for her to enter a Tao Palace level power, she might not be valued highly, and it was even to the extent that she might be discriminated against in that power because of her background. On the other hand, Zhuowen had interacted with Fire Plume and Steel Plume for a period of time, and he knew that they didn't have bad natures. If Tang Qimei joined the Violet Red House, then she would be able to receive their care, and she would definitely be able to develop even better. Fire Plume revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. She'd been coveting Tang Qimei's ancestral Tao root for a long time, and being able to recruit a genius with an Earth-grade ancestral Tao root was absolutely an extremely good thing for the Violet Red House. Junior sister Qimei, are you willing to join our Violet Red House? Don't worry. I guarantee that our Violet Red House will do our best to foster you. Fire Plume hurriedly looked at Tang Qimei and asked. Tang Qimei glanced at Zhuowen, and when she saw him nod at her, she nodded in agreement as well. Fire Plume was pleasantly surprised, and she hurriedly held Tang Qimei's hands. No one knew what they were talking about, but the two of them quickly became extremely intimate. Dragon City was the core of the Dragon Domain. The master of the Dragon Domain, the Ryuka, lived in Dragon City. A huge stone statue stood at the entrance of Dragon City. The statue depicted a young man in white robes. Although the young man wasn't an extremely handsome man, he was extremely pleasing to the eye. All the cultivators who entered Dragon City knew that the statue's owner was called Longwen, and it was said that he was the true leader of the Ryuka. The reason Ryuka had been able to develop to its current scale was basically because of Longwen. Of course, the cultivators who knew the inside story also knew that Longwen had another name, Zhuowen. When Zhuowen arrived at Dragon City and saw the bustling city, he couldn't help but nod inwardly. During his absence, his parents, grandfather, and big brother Lu Hantian had developed the Ryuka quite well. Moreover, Zhuowen's divine sense also detected several figures who were in seclusion in the depths of Dragon City. Among them, Lu Hantian caught Zhuowen's attention the most, because Lu Hantian's cultivation had reached the life enlightenment realm. It could be said that he was the strongest person in the Ryuka. Even his father, Long Xiaotian, was not as strong as Lu Hantian. Zhuowen entered the depths of Dragon City and spread out his divine sense, entering the minds of all the Ryuka people. Zhuowen, that kid, is finally back. In the depths of the cliff, Lu Hantian suddenly opened his eyes. With a carefree smile on his face, he smashed the surrounding cliff and leaped out. Winner is back! In the luxurious attic in the center of Dragon City, Long Xiaotian and Long Xiangding were playing chess, while Feng Xiao stood on the side and poured tea. At the same time, she was watching the father and son play chess with a smile on her face. But soon, the three figures froze, and Feng Xiao was the first to rush out. Long Xiaotian and Long Xiangding looked at each other and saw a touch of joy in each other's eyes. They quickly got up and left the room. Chapter 2685. Preparations in the Dragon City Plaza. Zhuowen led Mu Qinshui and the others as they strolled leisurely. Soon, the Long family's people lined up in front of them. When the members of the Long family arrived, many of the cultivators around the square recognized them. Reverence appeared on their faces as they made way for them. Looking at the members of the Long family who had arrived, they discussed animatedly. Then the cultivators were surprised to find that the core members of the Ryuka, who dominated the entire Dragon City, were kneeling on one knee on the ground. They were kneeling towards the young man who was strolling leisurely in the plaza. Long Xiaotian, Lu Hantian, and the rest of the Ryuka elites rushed forward and surrounded the young man in the center. They were extremely excited. Some of the sharp-eyed cultivators saw the young man's face and felt that it was very familiar. Then they thought of the stone statue outside the Dragon City and felt that the young man looked exactly the same as the stone statue. This shouldn't be the dragon text, right? Such a powerhouse has returned. The Ryuka is going to rise to another level. I thought that we could still surpass the Ryuka and replace them. Now, it seems that it's not possible. Amidst the discussions, Zhuowen was led into the Ryuka residence by Long Xiaotian and Lu Hantian. In the luxurious hall, Zhuowen sat on the main seat. Lu Hantian, Long Xiaotian, and Long Xiangding sat on either side of him. Zhuowen, are you planning to bring the Ryuka to the Xian Mi celestial domain? Lu Hantian suddenly asked. Yes, the 8 heavens are already a place of trouble. If we continue to stay, we will be implicated. No one can avoid it. Zhuowen said, Is it because of the prehistoric celestial domain? Long Xiaotian asked. Zhuowen shook his head and said, It's not all because of the great desolate heaven realm. I'm afraid that the 8 great heavens will turn into the demon realm soon. Zhuowen explained in detail about the land of origin on Earth. Although there were many resources in the land of origin, Zhuowen also knew that it was now under the control of Donghuang Tai. Entering the land of origin would be courting death. Donghuang Tai had already turned Huaxia Heaven region into a devil region. His next move was to turn the other 7 heaven regions into devil regions, making the other 8 heaven regions his territory. After hearing Zhuowen's explanation, the Ryuka's faces changed. Zhuowen, are you planning to take the entire Dragon City with you? Long Xiangding asked. Zhuowen shook his head and said, No need, Dragon City is too big, and there are crooks mixed in with the honest folk. I will only take the real Ryuka. The rest will not be taken away. After the betrayal of the Ryuka, Zhuowen was a little disgusted with outsiders who joined the Ryuka. If they were not reliable people, Zhuowen would not spend so much effort to take them away. Brother Han Tian, father, mother, and grandfather, how long will it take for you to make the arrangements? Zhuowen asked. Long Xiaotian pondered for a while and said, It will be very fast, just a day. However, there are many resources in the Ryuka that need to be transported. I'm afraid it will take a lot of time. It will take about 5 days to arrange everything. All right, in these 5 days, you all go and make the arrangements. I plan to go into seclusion again. If I don't come out by then, it's best to use the communication talisman to inform me. After making the arrangements, Zhuowen chose an extremely spacious mansion, set up layers of restrictions, and went into seclusion again. Mu Qinshui and the others did not disturb Zhuowen. They could see that Zhuowen attached great importance to this seclusion. Mu Qinshui and the others guessed right. Zhuowen indeed attached great importance to this seclusion, because he planned to take advantage of these 5 days to madly absorb the Heavenly Way rule energy in the Heavenly Way crystal vein in order to break through to the 3-star Pangu sacred body. Zhuowen directly entered the small world and sat cross-legged in the center of the Heavenly Way crystal vein. Like a whale sucking in water, he began to absorb the Heavenly Way energy in the vein. If Zhuowen hadn't been in the minor world, the commotion caused by him absorbing the Heavenly Tao origin crystals would have definitely alarmed the entire Dragon City. It was just too terrifying. It was like a huge wave had risen up on the surface of the sea. 5 days later, Zhuowen's communication talisman rang, and Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, the 3rd dim star appeared in the flame star between Zhuowen's eyebrows, which meant that Zhuowen's Pangus sacred body had entered the 3-star realm. Of course, it was only at the early stage of the 3-star realm. Zhuowen looked at the Heavenly Way origin crystal vein, which had lost nearly 10% of its original value. He knew that after absorbing so much energy from the Heavenly Way origin crystal vein, he could only barely advance to the 3-star Pangu sacred body. Now he finally knew how difficult it was to cultivate the Pangu sacred body. Moreover, Zhuowen also knew that the Pangu sacred body was a step every 3 stars, just like the 3 steps of Taoism. Each step had 3 realms. When the Pangu sacred body reached the 3-star realm, it would be extremely difficult to advance to the 4-star realm. The resources required would be unimaginable. Zhuowen knew that even if he absorbed all the energy from the Heavenly Way origin crystal vein, he would at most advance to the peak of the 3-star realm. It was basically wishful thinking to break through the 3-star realm and advance to the 4-star realm. Since there was no hope for him to break through to the 4-star realm, Zhuowen naturally did not plan to use up all the Heavenly Way origin crystal vein. He planned to use the remaining Heavenly Way origin crystal vein to shoot Ho Yi's divine arrows. The remaining 60% of the Heavenly Way origin crystal vein was enough for Zhuowen to shoot Ho Yi's divine arrows 2 more times. Zhuowen clenched his fists. After advancing to the 3-star Pangu sacred body, Zhuowen felt that his strength had multiplied many times. Now he could kill Hunyuan Master even without using Taoist skills. Even the Heavens Will Master would have a hard time killing Zhuowen now. Of course, if Zhuowen reached the peak of the 3-star realm, his strength would increase by several times. He would be able to kill the Master of Destiny with his bare hands. That would be truly heaven-defying. At the same time, Zhuowen also realized that the space within Devourer King's body had begun to evolve into a real world after the strength of his doppelganger had increased. There were also various kinds of rules appearing in it. It would not be long before the space within Devourer King's body became a real world. After leaving the small world, Zhuowen opened the door and found Long Xiaotian, Lu Hantian, Mu Qinxue, and the others there. "Father, is everything ready?" Zhuowen asked. "Everything is ready. This time, we have selected people who are absolutely trustworthy. There are more than 1,000 of them, and they are the backbone of our Ryuka," Long Xiaotian said. "Good. Bring them into the space-time roulette. There are countless spaces in the space-time roulette. It is more than enough to accommodate more than 1,000 people." Chapter 2686. The Phoenix people in the cold and dark starry sky. A broken meteorite exploded, and a green-haired corpse flew out from the meteorite, its eyes glowing with a green light. The green-haired corpse looked in the direction of the Hua Xia heavenly region and muttered to itself, "Dong Huang Tai is really fast. He has already begun to expand his territory, but this is good too. With Dong Huang Tai causing such a huge commotion here, I think he will attract the attention of the sorcerer tribe. At that time, he won't notice me." The green-haired corpse laughed and came to the seal. Then it punched the seal, and the terrifying fist force formed a terrifying spiral vortex. Crack, crack, crack. A dull sound rang out from the seal, and then countless cracks appeared on the surface of the seal. In the end, it collapsed into countless spots of light. "Break again," The green-haired corpse punched again, and the gap in the seal expanded several times. It looked like an endless black hole, and it was terrifying. The moment the seal was broken, the green-haired corpse turned into a green light and disappeared from the hole. Not long after the green-haired corpse disappeared, the black hole was filled with ghostly wails and howls. Then, black shadows swept out from the depths of the black hole like ghosts. Their voices were sharp and ear-piercing. The seal has been broken. Although I don't know who did it, it's a good thing for us. Hee, I heard that there are many humans in the 8 heavens. Other than fighting in the starry sky, I haven't seen a human for a long time, let alone have a taste of one. I miss it so much. Since we're already out, let's kill to our heart's content, ha. The evil conversation, accompanied by the black shadows, continued to ring out. Rumble. Suddenly, a terrifying flame spewed out from the depths of the black hole. The black shadows that were still lingering at the entrance of the hole screamed the moment they came into contact with the flame, and then they were annihilated into ashes. Leave quickly, it's the Phoenix People's Almighty. What's going on? The Phoenix People are one of the 4 Shenzhen and one of the top 10 races. Why would such an Almighty be interested in the 8 heavens? Who knows? If we encounter such an Almighty, we should try to avoid them. Otherwise, we won't even know how we died. The black shadows were afraid, and they all ran away, not daring to get close to the black hole. The flame was still raging at the entrance of the black hole, and it was getting more and more intense. The flame was extremely terrifying. As it burned, the surrounding stars were distorted as if they disappeared. When the flames reached their most terrifying state, a figure slowly walked out. It was a tall man wearing a flaming armor, like a flaming god of war. This man's skin was a healthy, wheat-colored color. His face was resolute, as if it had been carved by a knife. The edges and corners of his face were distinct, and there was a flame mark between his eyebrows. This person's flame mark was completely different from the flame star on Zhuo Wen's forehead. The flame star on Zhuo Wen's forehead was more like a dot, but this person's flame imprint was like a vivid flame. There is a member of our race in the barren 8 heavens, and he has awakened the Phoenix bloodline, which resonates with our ancestral land. He must be an extraordinary bloodline inheritor. We must bring such a genius back to the Phoenix people. If he is discovered by the human race or other races, our race will be destroyed. The flame mark between the man's eyebrows kept flashing. He looked forward with a hint of worry in his eyes. He knew very well that anyone who could resonate with the ancestral land was an earth-shattering, almighty figure in the Phoenix clan. Now, another such genius had appeared among the Phoenix people. It was a great fortune for the Phoenix people. However, such a genius was still wandering outside. It was very dangerous. If someone found out that he had the powerful Phoenix bloodline, he would be in great danger. We have to find this person as soon as possible. Fortunately, I have already informed the elders of our race. They will be here soon. I hope I'm not too late, the man murmured worriedly. Then he stepped on the starry sky with his right foot and rushed forward like a bolt of lightning. He was also a Phoenix people. He had a special ability to sense the bloodline of his own race. Therefore, the moment he entered the starry sky, he sensed the person who had awakened the Phoenix bloodline. Now he was going to the place where that person was. Zhuowen watched as the Ryuka people entered the space-time wheel. When all the Ryuka people had entered, Zhuowen turned to Fire Plume and Steel Plume and said, "When we leave the great Brahma Heaven Domain and enter the starry sky, we will have to part ways. I hope you can take them to the Xian Mi Heaven Domain first." "Brother Zhuo, what do you mean?" Fire Plume and Steel Plume asked in surprise. Mu Qinxue also exclaimed, "Husband, are you not coming with us?" "I still have some things to do. I might be a little late." Zhuowen smiled helplessly. He had collected the 3 space-time keys for some time, but he had not had the time to enter the space-time temple. Now that he was about to leave the Xianmi heaven domain, he naturally had to go to the space-time temple to take a look. Perhaps he would gain something. Mu Qinxiue seemed to have guessed something. She nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Husband, be careful." Zhuowen chuckled. He hugged Mu Qinxiue and said, "Qinxue, don't worry. Your husband's life is very tough." Mu Qinxiue giggled and flirted with Zhuowen. Then Zhuowen arranged for everyone to enter the space-time wheel and leave the Dragon City. Half a day later, the space-time wheel had left the great Brahma heaven domain and entered the starry sky. The starry sky was filled with countless dead stars and trash stars. The entire starry sky was pitch black and lifeless. After Zhuowen entered the starry sky, he immediately flew towards the heavenly moat. However, after flying for 2 hours, Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He felt an intense uneasiness in his heart. It was this uneasiness that made Zhuowen immediately stop the space-time wheel. "Husband, what's wrong?" Mu Qinxiue looked at Zhuowen in surprise. Not only Mu Qinxiue, but the rest of the people on the space-time wheel also looked puzzled. "We have entered a huge trap array. I didn't notice it just now, but now I feel that something is wrong." Zhuowen's voice was gloomy and his heart was heavy. He had just become a heavenly Tao divine array master, and his understanding of array Tao was already very deep. However, he did not notice the trap array in front of him. He only realized that something was wrong after he had completely entered the trap array. He knew that the person who set up the trap array was definitely an extremely high-level divine array master. However, Zhuowen was puzzled. Why did the master of the trap array set up a trap array to trap them? Chapter 2687. Master Yuan Hui, what? We've entered an entrapment array. Fire Plume, Steel Plume, and the others were also shocked, and the confusion in their eyes became even more intense. Their understanding of array formations was only superficial, so until now they had not realized that they were already in an entrapment array. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes slightly, waved his sleeve, and summoned 81 beast bone array discs. After setting up a heavenly Tao level defensive array around the space-time roulette, a powerful divine sense was born. His divine sense was much more advanced than his realm, and after sweeping around, he found a figure hiding directly below. What a powerful divine sense! You're just at the two extremities of life and death. Yet you actually have such a powerful divine sense. It's really incredible. This figure also knew that he had been discovered by Zhuowen's divine sense. So he simply stopped hiding and openly appeared in front of the space-time roulette. Zhuowen looked over and found that the figure in front of him was a bald man in a loose robe. At this moment, the bald man was looking at Zhuowen with great interest, showing great interest in Zhuowen. "Master Yuan Hui." Fire Plume and Steel Plume's faces changed drastically, and they cried out in fear, their bodies trembling. "Your master Yuan Hui." Zhuowen's eyes flickered. Fire Plume and Steel Plume had mentioned Master Yuan Hui to him before. He knew that Master Yuan Hui was an eternal level divine array master sent by the Huangji family to repair the seal, and his array Tao had reached the acme of perfection. With just the array Tao, Master Yuan Hui could easily kill a master of heaven like Zoda. After all, the two were not in the same realm. Master Yuan Hui smiled slightly, and his eyes fell on Fire Plume and Steel Plume, and said casually, "Do you know about the death of Crown Prince Huangzi?" Fire Plume's pretty face turned pale, and she forced a smile. "Master Yuan, we must be joking. We haven't even met Crown Prince Huangzi, so how could we know about this?" Grandmaster Yuan Hui nodded and continued, "However, when I was at the place where Crown Prince Huangzi died, I extracted the auras from the two of you. When Crown Prince Huangzi died, the two of you should have been present, right?" Fire Plume and Steel Plume were frightened, and they stammered, unable to speak. Master Yuan Hui's deterrence was too strong. This was a true eternal level divine array master. Even the master of Purple Red House had to be respectful in front of Master Yuan Hui, not daring to show any neglect. This was a real big shot. To put it bluntly, such a big shot killing the two of them was no different from crushing an ant. Once Grandmaster Yuan Hui had the intention to kill them, they would definitely die without a doubt. Zhou previous performance was extremely strong, but in the eyes of Fire Plume and Steel Plume, Zhou was far inferior to a big shot like Master Yuan Hui. Speak. With the strength of the two of you, you can't kill Huangzi. As long as you tell the truth, I won't make things difficult for the two of you, and I won't go back to the Huangji clan to spread rumors. Everything has nothing to do with you. Master Yuan Hui's voice was calm, but under this calmness there was an unimaginable killing intent. Zhou looked on coldly. He wanted to see how Fire Plume and Steel Plume would answer Master Yuan Hui's questions. Sure enough, Fire Plume and Steel Plume felt their scalps go numb, but Fire Plume stubbornly said, Master Yuan Hui, we also happened to pass by after Crown Prince Huangzi fell. We don't know who killed Crown Prince Huangzi. Master Yuan Hui was still smiling, but this smile contained monstrous killing intent. The two of you have done well. Since the two of you don't know who the real murderer is, then die. As soon as Master Yuan Hui finished speaking, a huge vortex appeared above Fire Plume and Steel Plume. Immediately, the vortex's energy condensed into a huge hand that covered the sky and came crashing down towards Fire Plume and Steel Plume. At this moment, Fire Plume and Steel Plume were still on the space-time roulette. This attack was obviously not just aimed at Fire Plume and Steel Plume. Master Yuan Hui intended to kill everyone on the space-time roulette. Fire Plume and Steel Plume were so scared that their faces turned pale. The two of them were so scared that they didn't even dare to resist. Zhou looked at Fire Plume and Steel Plume and couldn't help but shake his head. Immediately, he took a step forward, clenched his right fist, and punched out fiercely. Ever since Zhou had advanced to the 3-star Pangu's sacred body, his strength had increased exponentially. He wanted to test how powerful his 3-star Pangu sacred body was now. Boom! The fist tore through the starry sky and smashed into the vortex hand. Zhou groaned and retreated dozens of steps. The vortex hand collapsed into countless light spots. Master Yuan Hui, who had his hands behind his back and didn't care, suddenly let out a soft cry of surprise when he found that the vortex hand had been shattered by Zhou's punch. He looked at the young man in white not far away with some surprise. In his perception, the young man in white didn't have a strong aura. He was only at the two extremities of life and death. How could he have such powerful strength? Did you kill Crown Prince Huangzi? Master Yuan Hui suddenly asked. It had to be said that Master Yuan Hui's reaction was very fast. After Zhou showed his powerful strength, he had some guesses. Zhou looked at Master Yuan Hui with a grave expression. His heart was gloomy. The blow just now was obviously a casual blow for Master Yuan Hui, but it had made him so embarrassed. He knew that now that he had condensed the 3-star Pangu sacred body, there was a big gap between him and Master Yuan Hui. If they really fought, Zhou wouldn't be a match for Master Yuan Hui at all if he didn't use the profound meaning. Thinking of the profound meaning, Zhou felt bitter. Although he had advanced to the 3-star Pangu sacred body, his use of the profound meaning was still at the most basic level. Although he could use the profound meaning for a longer time, he still couldn't use it for too long. Moreover, Zhou also found that the power of the profound meaning increased with the advancement of his Pangu sacred body. The moment he advanced to the 3-star Pangu sacred body, he used the profound meaning again. The power was much stronger than when he was still at the 2-star Pangu sacred body. Master Yuan Hui saw that Zhou was silent and didn't answer his question. He frowned and was a little unhappy. In fact, he asked the question even though he already knew the answer. This young man had such powerful strength, and he was with Fire Plume and Steel Plume. He was undoubtedly the most suspicious person who killed Huangzi. Of course, he didn't think that Zhuowen was responsible for Zoda's death. After all, Zoda was a destiny master. Although the young man in white in front of him was somewhat extraordinary, he was still far from being able to kill a destiny master. Chapter 2688. Chapter 2688. New YOR Kiklansman brat who killed Zoda. Master Yuan, we continued to ask. If you let them go, I'll tell you who killed Huang Zhe and Zoda. Zhuowen pointed at the space-time roulette behind him and said calmly. Master Yuan Hui chuckled and said coldly, Do you think I'm a fool? Now that you're trapped in my trap array, your life and death are in my hands. Killing you is as easy as flipping my hand. Why should I let them go? Do you really think I can't break your trap array? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said coldly. Master Yuan Hui was stunned and immediately laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Even a god array master of the same level would need a certain amount of time to break the trap array set up by him, an eternal grade array master. However, this white-robed youth in front of him actually dared to say that he could break his trap array. He was really laughing his head off. Master Yuan, we could tell at a glance that this white-robed youth came from the 8 heavens domains. A guy who came from this barren land without resources was probably not even a heavenly grade array master. Yet he dared to say that he could break his trap array. Zhuowen ignored Master Yuan Hui's ridicule and silently circulated the energy in his body. He immediately used the profundity of restriction he obtained from the Panga banner, Primordial Chaos Infinity. Primordial Chaos Infinity, as the name suggested, could imprison anything. This profundity was similar to the Array Dao restriction of cultivators, but it was superior to Array Dao restriction. Moreover, Zhuowen also found that Primordial Chaos Infinity not only had the ability to imprison, but also had the ability to break restrictions. As long as it was related to restrictions, Primordial Chaos Infinity could break it. Master Yuan Hui's trap array was indeed powerful, but Zhuowen was more confident in Primordial Chaos Infinity. Primordial Chaos Infinity was the profundity of the Panga banner. Although Primordial Chaos Infinity might not be able to completely break the array restriction, Zhuowen believed that it would not be a problem to break a small gap and let the space-time roulette escape. Thinking of this, Zhuowen waved his right hand, and the power of Primordial Chaos Infinity swept out. It turned into a purple light and landed on the edge of the trap array on the left. Master Yuan Hui saw this scene and did not stop it. However, the mocking smile on his face became even more intense. In his opinion, Zhuowen was just a joke. He wanted to see what would happen to this guy who was seriously injured by the backlash of the trap array restriction. His trap array was not an ordinary trap array. It also contained a powerful killing intent. Once a cultivator was trapped inside and tried to escape from the trap array, they would suffer a backlash from the trap array. However, what happened next made Hui's eyes too, was Yuan Hui was stunned. Chaos Infinity, ITY. He realized that the moment Zhuowen's attack landed on the edge of the trap array, the energy shield at the edge of the trap array shook violently. Then a huge gap cracked open. Then Zhuowen immediately controlled the space-time roulette and escaped from the gap before Master Yuan Hui could react. This guy, how did he do it? Master Yuan Hui muttered to himself after he came back to his senses. He was furious. An existence that he regarded as an ant had escaped from the trap array he had set up. This was a slap to his face. I must kill you. Master Yuan Hui's killing intent was monstrous. He immediately took a step forward and chased after the space-time roulette at an extremely fast speed. In the space-time roulette, Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He realized that Master Yuan Hui was constantly approaching from 100,000 miles behind him. He had already pushed the space-time roulette's speed to the limit, but he still couldn't shake off Master Yuan Hui. Instead, the distance between them was constantly being pulled closer. Zhuowen knew that he couldn't continue like this. Otherwise, Master Yuan Hui would eventually catch up to him. You guys go first. I'll hold off Master Yuan Hui. Zhuoyin summoned Xiaohe and let Xiaohe control the space-time roulette. Before anyone could react, he had already rushed out of the space-time roulette and faced Master Yuan Hui. When everyone finally reacted, they could only vaguely see Zhuoyin's back, standing in the distant starry sky. Brother Zhuo is going to face Master Yuan Hui alone. Fire Plume asked worriedly. As a cultivator of the Xian Mi heavenly domain, Fire Plume knew very well how terrifying Master Yuan Hui was. Even a second-step Dao validation cultivator would be extremely cautious in front of Master Yuan Hui, let alone Zhuoyin. Mu Qinxue frowned slightly and remained silent. Look, something is rushing towards us. Suddenly, Tong Qimei pointed at the distant starry sky in front of the space-time roulette. There, a light spot was rushing towards them at an incredible speed. Its speed was so fast that it shocked the world. What is that? It's so fast! Fire Plume exclaimed in surprise. Mu Qinxue also raised her head to look at the light spot. Her beautiful eyes revealed a confused look. She didn't know why, but the aura emitted by the light spot gave her a sense of familiarity. It was a very strange feeling. It's a ball of flames. It seems like there's a figure in the flames. Tong Qimei cried out in alarm when the speck of light got closer. Mu Qinxue, Fire Plume, and the others finally saw the figure in the flames clearly. Moreover, the figure was rushing towards them, which made them extremely puzzled. Whoosh! The flame landed in front of the space-time roulette. Immediately, the robust man surrounded by flames knelt on one knee and faced Mu Qinxue's direction. This lowly one, Kong Shi of the Phoenix people, pays his respects to Milady. Mu Qinxue was stunned when she heard this. Fire Plume and the others were even more stunned. You're from the Phoenix people? Fire Plume asked with a strange look in his eyes. Kong Shi coldly glanced at Fire Plume until the latter felt uncomfortable. Only then did Kong Shi's gaze fall on Mu Qinxue. His eyes were blazing with intense passion. His heart was surging with excitement because when he approached the woman in front of him, Kong Shi could clearly feel his bloodline boiling, trembling, and fearful. Only the truly noble experts among the Phoenix people could cause such an abnormal reaction in his bloodline. They were also the true rulers of the Phoenix people. There was no doubt that the beautiful woman in front of him was not only one of his clansmen, but also possessed an extremely rich Phoenix bloodline. She was extremely extraordinary. No wonder she could resonate with the ancestral land. This clansman in front of me is a true genius. If she can enter the Phoenix people's nirvana rebirth, she will be even more heaven-defying. Our Phoenix people will have hope of rising again. Thinking of this, Kong Shi's reverence for Mu Qinxue grew even more. In the Eldritch Heaven domain, all the races valued bloodlines. The nobility of one's bloodline also determined one's future achievements and directly affected one's future path. Chapter 2689. Kong Shi, although Mu Qinxue didn't know the origins of the Phoenix people, she could guess that the Phoenix people had something to do with the Phoenix bloodline in her body. Moreover, from Kong Shi's attitude, Mu Qinxue could also guess that the Phoenix bloodline she had awakened was extraordinary. Otherwise, Kong Shi wouldn't be so respectful. Although Mu Qinxue could not see through Kong Shi's specific cultivation, from the powerful aura faintly emanating from Kong Shi, Mu Qinxue knew that this Kong Shi in front of her must be a second-step Dao confirming expert. Mu Qinxue's eyes lit up when she thought about how her husband was facing Master Yuan Hui alone. My lord, you have an extremely powerful Phoenix bloodline in your body. It's too dangerous for you to be outside. Not only will the Xianmi heavenly domain's human race covet you, but if the other races in the primitive heavenly domain detect your bloodline, they won't let you go either. Kong Shi said, respectfully. What do you mean? Mu Qinxue asked calmly. Follow me to meet the Phoenix people. Your bloodline is so powerful. If you can obtain the power of nirvana, you will become the new saintess of the Phoenix people. You will enjoy endless glory and become extremely powerful, Kong Shi said. Mu Chinchua didn't answer Kong Shi directly. Instead, she said calmly, "Just now, a divine array master of the human race chased after me. In order to save me, my husband blocked that divine array master alone. Now, you have to help my husband." Kong Shi was stunned and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He didn't expect Mu Chinchua to have a Tao companion. Moreover, from the way she addressed him, it could be seen that Mu Chinchua valued her Tao companion very much. This made Kong Shi very unhappy. In Kong Shi's eyes, Mu Chinchua was bound to become the saintess of the Phoenix people. Since she was the saintess, she had to be pure. How could she have a Tao companion? If this matter were to spread to the ears of the other clans, it would be a disgrace to the Phoenix clan. However, Kong Shi naturally wouldn't say this in front of Mu Chinchua. After all, once Mu Chinchua joined the Phoenix people, her status would instantly surpass his. He didn't dare to offend his future boss. However, Kong Shi was already unhappy with the Tao companion mentioned by Mu Chinchua. If there was a chance, he wouldn't mind making that person suffer a little. "What, you're not willing? If you don't want to, I won't force you. But I won't go to the Phoenix people either." When Mu Chinchua saw Kong Shi's embarrassed expression, her beautiful eyes immediately turned cold. But her heart was a little anxious. Right now, she couldn't find a strong helper. Kong Shi, who had delivered himself to her door, was obviously not weak. If she had Kong Shi's help, she might be able to fight against Master Yuan Hui. Kong Shi smiled bitterly and hurriedly said, "My lady, you must be joking. As long as it's your order, Kong Shi naturally won't refuse. Now, please lead the way. Kong Shi will go and take a look. Come with me." Mu Chinchua nodded and calmly instructed Xiao He to return the way they came. Fire Plume, Steel Plume, and the others stood on the deck and didn't say a word. They also knew that they couldn't interrupt. They could feel that Kong Shi's aura was extremely powerful. It might not be weaker than Master Yuan Hui. They absolutely didn't dare to casually interrupt such a big shot. After all, Kong Shi was polite to Mu Chinchua because Mu Chinchua had a powerful Phoenix bloodline. Otherwise, with Kong Shi's strength, how could he be so polite to Mu Chinchua, who was only the heavenly Tao master? Moreover, they weren't Mu Chinchua. If they casually interrupted, Kong Shi would probably immediately teach them a lesson. Zhuowen took a deep breath and put his left index and middle fingers together. Then he suddenly hooked them up and circulated the profound meaning of forbidden, primordial chaos infinity, and blasted it behind him. Instantly, the formation disc that Master Yuan Hui had thrown out was blasted to smithereens by Zhuowen's hook. The killing formation contained within also vanished like smoke. Grandmaster Yuan Hui's eyes were overflowing with killing intent. The formations he had unleashed time and time again were actually ineffective against Zhuowen. They were all destroyed by him. This made Grandmaster Yuan Hui feel both shock and anger toward Zhuowen. He wanted nothing more than to immediately kill Zhuowen. Of course, Master Yuan Hui was also extremely puzzled. His level in the Tao of Formations was already considered high. In the Xian Mi heavenly domain, there weren't many people who could surpass him in the Tao of Formations. It was very difficult for ordinary people to break through his formations, let alone someone like Zhuowen, who was able to shatter his formations in an instant. This was just too strange. Master Yuan, who guessed that Zhuowen definitely had some kind of treasure that specialized in restraining formations. If he could obtain this treasure in Zhuowen's hands, Master Yuan Hui's heart couldn't help but burn. When the time came, he would be even more fearless when facing those difficult formations. This would be extremely useful for him when he entered the secret realm in the future and broke through the great formations. "I have to kill this kid. Not only is his strength terrifying, but he also has this kind of method to break formations. He definitely has a huge secret. Once I kill him, all his secrets will be mine. Grandmaster Yuan Hui thought to himself. His methods had indeed become even more ferocious. Master Yuan Hui waved his sleeve and actually took out a chessboard made entirely of crystal from his small world. Master Yuan Hui formed a seal with both hands, then slapped his palms on the chessboard. An invisible ripple rapidly swept out from the chessboard. It moved extremely quickly. Zhuowen only felt a gentle breeze brush past his face. Afterwards, he became puzzled. Afterwards, he discovered that there were two lines that intersected beneath his feet. He was familiar with this intersection. It was the intersection of the lines on the chessboard. He looked around and discovered that the starry sky had formed a huge chessboard. Zhuowen, on the other hand, seemed to have become an insignificant chess piece on this huge chessboard. This is a life-bound God artifact that I've refined after studying it for a very long time. It's called the world of chess. In the world of chess, your life and death are no longer up to you. Master Yuan Hui hovered in the center of the chessboard. He looked down at Zhuowen indifferently, as if he was looking down on all life. Zhuowen's heart sank. Although his movements were not restricted by much as he stood on the chessboard, a layer of haze appeared in his heart. Bang! 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 As expected, a white chess piece suddenly shot out from the nearby chessboard. Instead of calling it a chess piece, Zhuowen felt like it was more like a huge white rock. It just looked like a chess piece. Rumble! The chess piece moved extremely quickly. It shot through the air and landed above the intersection where Zhuowen stood. Afterwards, it plummeted straight down as if an invisible hand had grabbed the chess piece and wanted to land it on the intersection where Zhuowen stood. Zhuowen wanted to dodge, but he discovered that the lines on the chessboard began to light up the moment he raised his foot. Afterwards, he discovered that the lines were indestructible, revolving around Zhuowen. Chapter 2690, Predicament Zhuowen also sensed the power and danger of these lines. In the end, he did not take a step forward. Instead, he faced the huge chess piece that was flying towards him. Zhuowen did not hesitate to unleash the power of the three-star Pengu sacred body. He punched out, and a series of explosions came from the starry sky. It was as if something powerful had exploded inside the starry sky. Boom! Zhuowen's heart sank when his fist landed on the chess piece. This was because he found that the strength of the chess piece was beyond his expectations. Seal. Zhuowen did not hesitate to use the ultimacy, Hongmeng Wuji, to seal the chess piece in midair. He then jumped up and landed on the chess piece. Whoosh! 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 The moment Zhuowen landed on the chess piece, other chess pieces also flew out from the other positions on the chessboard. These chess pieces were black and white, but they all had the same goal. They were all heading towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen activated Hongmeng Wuji to the extreme. The moment the chess pieces landed in front of him, they were all frozen in midair by his Hongmeng Wuji ultimacy. They became his stepping stones. Zhuowen also relied on these chess pieces to pave the path under his feet. The end of the path was the position of Tianyuan, which was also where Master Yuan Hui was. Master Yuan Hui looked at Zhuowen, who was getting closer to Tianyuan, with a look of surprise. He did not expect this guy to come up with such a way to get close to Tianyuan. The world of chess is dominated by me. You can't get close to Tianyuan. Master Yuan Hui shook his head and then stomped his right foot. Suddenly, the lines on the chessboard broke away and leaped into the sky. They chaotically intertwined and formed an unprecedentedly huge monster with a human face and a snake's body. Roar! The monster with a human face and a snake's body opened its huge mouth and exuded a choking stench. Master Yuan Hui sneered as he looked at Zhuowen, who was still dealing with the chess pieces around him. He did not think that Zhuowen could escape his attack. Zhuowen looked at the monster that was rushing towards him and frowned. He formed a seal with his right hand and used the ultimacy sky opening blade. The surface of his right palm turned into a blade. A faint light covered the surface of his palm. It was as if a light blade had suddenly shot out. Roar! The sky opening blade, which stood sky opening blade, landed on the head of the monster. Sky opening blade. The monster sky opening blade. The sky opening blade. Uft! Blood, Zhuowen blood his face and his face. Using two ultimacies at the same time is his sky opening blade. Is sky opening translation using ultimacy. Zhuowen looked at the shocked Master Yuan Hui and used his left hand to use the ultimacy primordial infinity. He stopped the chess pieces that were rushing towards him and began to change their paths in an attempt to escape from the chessboard. Master Yuan Hui came back to his senses. When he saw that Zhuowen was trying to escape, he immediately thought of the move that Zhuowen had just used. It must have been his greatest trump card and consumed a lot of energy. Master Yuan Hui, of course, would not let Zhuowen leave. Master Yuan Hui rolled up his right sleeve. The surface of his right hand was engraved with red runes. Then Master Yuan Hui's right hand formed a palm and slammed it on the ground. In an instant, the red runes emitted a dazzling red light. Then, the entire chessboard surged like a tsunami. The surface of the chessboard was undulating. Then numerous chess pieces flew out and shot towards Zhuowen. When Zhuowen saw the densely packed chess pieces, his expression immediately changed. Every chess piece on the chessboard was extremely powerful. At most, Zhuowen could only deal with a dozen chess pieces at the same time. However, there were hundreds and thousands of chess pieces this time. There were too many of them. Zhuowen knew that he would not be able to deal with them all. Zhuowen sighed. He still had the powerful trump card of Hou Yi's godly arrow. He knew that as long as he shot out Hou Yi's godly arrow, he would be able to severely injure Master Yuan Hui or even kill Master Yuan Hui. However, he knew that Hou Yi's godly arrow was a single-target attack. Moreover, it took too long to charge up. If he did not lock onto Master Yuan Hui immediately, he would be in a passive position. He might even be killed by Master Yuan Hui's sneak attack. Zhuo, when using Hou Yi's god arrow to block, such a large-scale attack would be an idiotic move. Moreover, Zhuowen did not have any powerful defensive means. He could not block the attacks of so many chess pieces. At the critical moment, Zhuowen took out the escape talisman that he had plundered from Huang Zhe's small world. Huang Zhe was the heir of Huang Ji family. The escape talisman on him was extremely high level. Zhuowen did not understand it. He only knew that the escape talisman was very powerful. Now that he was in such a life-and-death situation, he did not hesitate to use one of the escape talismans. Bang! Zhuowen disappeared on the spot and appeared at the edge of the chessboard. However, he was blocked by the energy barrier at the edge and was sent back into the chessboard. Zhuowen's expression turned ugly. He knew that Master Yuan Hui still had a backup plan. The chessboard was a huge barrier. It was not as simple as it looked. Escape talisman? It seems like you can really kill Crown Prince Huang Zhe. This escape talisman belongs to Crown Prince Huang Zhe. Master Yuan Hui looked at Zhuowen, who was sent back by the chessboard barrier. He also saw the talisman that had turned to ashes in Zhuowen's hand and sneered. Whoosh! 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 Another batch of hundreds and thousands of chess pieces tore through the air and surrounded Zhuowen from all directions. They crushed towards Zhuowen again. Zhuowen felt helpless. He could only use the escape talisman again. He had obtained a total of 12 escape talismans from Huang Zhe. Now that he had used 2 of them, it made his heart ache. Next, Zhuowen could only use the escape talisman again and again. Master Yuan Hui's chessboard barrier was too confining. With Zhuowen's strength, he could not break it. Master Yuan Hui also saw that Zhuowen had the ability to break the barrier. Therefore, after Zhuowen used the escape talisman, he immediately attacked to prevent Zhuowen from using the profound primordial infinity. Zhuowen was pressured by Master Yuan Hui's continuous attacks. He did not even have the time to use the profound primordial infinity. He could only crush the escape talisman in a hurry. Seeing that the escape talismans in his hand were getting fewer and fewer, Zhuowen's heart sank. When Zhuowen crushed the last escape talisman, he let out a soft sigh. He could only watch helplessly as countless chess pieces surrounded him from all directions. He decided to give it a try. He wanted to use the ultimate profound Penga's shadow. This ultimate profound was the most powerful profound of the Penga banner. It was said that at least the 7-star Pengu sacred body was required to use it. Otherwise, the body might not be able to withstand it and directly collapse. Boom! Chapter 2691. Big Wurjuan was startled and could not help but look behind him. Only then did he realize that a man surrounded by flames had landed on the edge of the chessboard like a god descending to the mortal world. It was this man who had shattered the chessboard's barrier with a single punch, indirectly saving Zhuowen's life. At the same time, Zhuowen also noticed the space-time roulette behind the man. Mu Qinxue, Fire Plume, and the others were on it. When they saw that Zhuowen was unscathed, they all heaved a sigh of relief. Master Yuan Hui frowned slightly and could not help but look at the man surrounded by flames. He felt a sense of danger from this man and could not help muttering to himself, "Eternal Overlord!" Eternal Overlord was the third stage of the second step of Tao validation. Theoretically, it was on the same level as Master Yuan Hui. After all, Master Yuan Hui was an eternal level array Tao master. However, in terms of combat strength, Master Yuan Hui was not as good as a real Eternal Overlord. After all, Eternal Overlords were cultivated and specialized in combat. They were extremely powerful. On the other hand, Eternal Level Array Tao Master mainly refined arrays, not for combat. In a one-on-one fight, Eternal Level Array Tao Master would be at a disadvantage. Therefore, Master Yuan Hui was extremely wary when he learned that the man who had suddenly appeared was an Eternal Overlord. "Your Excellency, who are you?" "I am Yuan Hui of the Huangji family. Why are you interfering in my private affairs?" Master Yuan Hui said coldly. The flaming man who had suddenly appeared was none other than the Phoenix people's powerhouse, Kongshi. Because the Phoenix people looked almost exactly the same as the human race, the only difference was the Phoenix bloodline in their bodies. Therefore, it was impossible to tell the difference between the Phoenix people and the human race. Because Master Yuan Hui had sealed the passage to the primitive heavenly realm, he subconsciously thought that the powerhouses of the primitive heavenly realm could not enter. So he did not think that Kongshi was from the primitive heavenly realm. Kongshi didn't even look at Master Yuan Hui. Instead, his attention fell on Zhuowen. He said coldly, "You are Zhuowen?" Zhuowen frowned slightly. He realized that the moment Kongshi looked at him, he felt that this person's gaze was somewhat unfriendly. Although Zhuowen felt uncomfortable with this person's gaze, this person had saved his life after all, so he still cupped his fists and thanked him politely. Kongshi sneered and ignored Zhuowen. Instead, he shifted his gaze to Master Yuan Hui. Zhuowen was baffled. He felt that this man who had suddenly appeared seemed to have a bad impression of him. Especially after this sneer, Zhuowen was somewhat speechless. He didn't seem to have done anything to make this man unhappy. Moreover, he had never seen this person before. Zhuowen stepped onto the space-time roulette. Fire Plume and Steel Plume looked at Zhuowen strangely. They never thought that Zhuowen would be able to tangle with Master Yuan Hui for so long. This was too abnormal. Zhuowen looked at Mu Qinxue and asked, "Qinxue, who is this person?" Mu Qinxue told him everything that had happened, not hiding anything. "Then this person is a powerhouse of the Phoenix people?" Zhuowen asked in surprise. Mu Qinxue nodded. Fire Plume quickly added, "The Phoenix people are one of the 4 Shenzhen of the Great Desolate Heavenly Realm. They're one of the top 10 races in the Great Desolate Heavenly Realm and are extremely powerful." Hearing this, Zhuowen fell silent. Then he looked at Mu Qinxue and said, "Qinxue, are you planning on going to the Phoenix people with this person?" Mu Qinxue revealed a faint smile and said, "Husband, you should be able to tell. I am too weak. Whether it is the Xianmi heavenly realm or the great, desolate heavenly realm, I am at the lowest level of cultivation. If I don't think of ways to become stronger, I won't be able to protect the people I want to protect. I don't like this kind of powerlessness." Zhuowen gave a sigh in his heart. Actually, when he heard Mu Qinxue talk about the Phoenix people, he had already guessed that Mu Qinxue would want to go with them. This was because he could feel Mu Qinxue's desire to become stronger. It was just like Zhuowen himself. In this world where the strong preyed on the weak, he did not want to be at the bottom and did not want to be a burden to others. "Husband, although my decision is a bit unfair to you." Mu Qinxue could see that Zhuowen was a bit disappointed. She wanted to explain, but she was cut off by Zhuowen. Zhuowen said with a gentle smile, "Qinxue, as long as it's your decision, I will not go against it. Actually, your decision is correct. The Phoenix bloodline in your body is too strong. If you don't go back to the Phoenix people and don't seek the protection of the Phoenix people, your bloodline will be coveted by many people." Mu Qinxue looked at Zhuowen and her eyes misted over. She emotionally said, "Husband, thank you." Zhuowen nodded. Then he looked at the master Yuan Hui and Kong Shi not far away. Zhuowen's eyes revealed killing intent as he said, "Qinxue, this master Yuan Hui must be killed. Otherwise he will become a disaster." Mu Qinxue nodded. Even without Zhuowen saying this, she did not plan on letting this master Yuan Hui go. This master Yuan Hui was a member of the Huangji family, and he knew that Zhuowen was a murderer. If this master Yuan Hui was allowed to go back, the Huangji family would quickly find out that this matter was done by Zhuowen. With the Huangji family's influence and Zhuowen's shallow foundation, it was impossible for him to fight against a giant like the Huangji family. Thinking of this, Mu Qinxue sent a voice transmission to Kong Shi, asking him to kill this master Yuan Hui. Kong Shi secretly glanced at Mu Qinxue behind him. At the same time, he coldly glanced at Zhuowen beside her. He knew that Mu Qinxue's request was most likely this despicable youth's suggestion. Thinking of this, Kong Shi's impression of this youth became even worse. At the same time, Kong Shi felt a headache coming on. Although he was an eternal overlord, he had just advanced not long ago. He was weaker than the average eternal overlord. Although Master Yuan Hui was not as strong as an eternal overlord, Kong Shi was only slightly stronger than this Master Yuan Hui. It would be very difficult for him to kill this Master Yuan Hui. Zhuowen also saw the difficulty in Kong Shi's eyes. He also sent a voice transmission. "Brother Kong, you just need to delay this Master Yuan Hui. Leave the killing of this Master Yuan Hui to me." Kong Shi almost laughed his teeth out. Was there something wrong with this youth's head? He had just escaped danger because of him. But now he was saying that he could kill this Master Yuan Hui? Was this a joke? I say, there should be a limit to your jokes, right? Do you think I'll believe you if you say you can kill this person? Kong Shi couldn't help but mock. Zhuowen's face darkened. Kong Shi had actually directly stated his goal. Even the distant Master Yuan Hui had heard it. Fortunately, Master Yuan Hui didn't take Zhuowen's word seriously. He was mainly focused on Kong Shi. Zhuowen sighed softly. Fortunately, he hadn't exposed his God arrows. If Master Yuan Hui knew he still had them, he would probably run away immediately. There was no way he would still be in a deadlock with Kong Shi. Yes, you just need to delay this Master Yuan Hui. Leave the killing of this Master Yuan Hui to me. Whether you believe it or not, your mission is to delay Master Yuan Hui. You don't need to ask about anything else, Zhuowen said calmly. Kong Shi's pupil shrank. He was extremely unhappy with Zhuowen's attitude. However, when he saw Mu Qinxue's signal, he could only snort coldly and reluctantly take action.